So I turn around to see the baby, and she's giving the baby a bottle like this, and the baby's very little, and he or she is looking at the mama, and the mama has the phone. And I could have cried, because I know, having had children and what I believe about parenting and mothering, your children understand the sense of who they are and their self-worth by the way their mother looks at them. And we have a generation of children who are being raised by mothers who are looking at their phones.
I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. Let me ask you a question. Do you like to get your chill on? Do you like to relax after a hard day at work and just come home and just kick your feet up and just get in the zone? I'm guessing that you do, especially if you live in a city in the modern world like I do. This is where the Organifi Gold comes in, you guys. This is the stuff that helps you chill out, soothe your nervous system, and recover, and even help you sleep. Now, the core of Organifi Gold is turmeric. It's a really powerful anti-inflammatory spice. It's also one of my favorites because I love the way it tastes when you mix it with the right stuff. Now, Organifi Gold definitely does this. It's got coconut milk, ginger, lemon balm, cinnamon, and even some medicinal mushrooms that help you get your chill on. So reducing stress, getting good sleep is crucial to health, and it's something I'm constantly working on. So I use the Organifi Gold on a regular basis. I make myself some really nice golden lattes at night with some ghee or grass-fed butter or coconut oil, just hot water, big scoop of that, some fats, put that in the blender, and I'm living the dream. It's also one of the most requested things from my friends and family when they come visit me at my house. They're like, dude, make me that gold knockout drink. And I put some other fancy stuff in there sometimes too to make it super strong. But even just the Organifi Gold by itself is delicious, and it really does calm you down. So I love that at night, or even just during the day if I'm kind of stressed out and freaking out about being a human being. Organifi Gold is my medicine. Make it yours at Organifi.com/Luke. Organifi is spelled with an I, of course. Organifi.com/Luke. The code to save yourself 15% over there at Organifi is Lifestylist. Doing a podcast that focuses much of the time on health, it of course makes sense that I get a lot of questions from people about how to improve their mental performance and function. So everybody wants to know about the new smart drug and the new nootropic and the new fancy thing. And there are some things on the market that work, but there's one thing that's quite old, my friends, that works very well, and that's called lion's mane mushrooms. And my friends over at foursigmatic.com have created not only one of the most potent and legit lion's mane mushroom products, but also one that tastes really good and is really easy to use. Now, they've also snuck a couple other things in there to help its effectiveness, such as organic peppermint, rose hips, rhodiola root, and even a hint of stevia. Now, this one is going to knock your socks off. So if you want brain and nervous system support, if you want an all-natural cognitive enhancer, this stuff's been scientifically proven to boost your memory and concentration. So you can use this when you're doing things like recording a podcast intro or promo, such as I'm doing now, studying, reading, writing, or just chilling out. You don't actually have to be using your brain a lot to take lion's mane. It just makes you feel good. It's amazing stuff. So if you want to check this out, what you want to do is this. Get over to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. That's foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. If you use the code over there in your cart, known as Luke Story, you're going to save 15% off your lion's mane elixir. So that's foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Save 15% with the code Luke Story. By listening to the following podcast, you've agreed to take the red pill, and your life will never be the same again. Our guest today is Carrie-Anne Moss. She's a mother and wife. She's also an actress, teacher, seeker, and storyteller. Her deep calling to connect with women led her to create Annapurna Living as a platform and portal for growth and nourishment. Now, with a community of women all over the world, Carrie-Anne teaches online courses designed to help women and mothers find their voice and step into their grace. And let me tell you what, whether you be man, woman, or child, this show is going to help you step into something. And what I think it is probably some deep reality. Really excited to bring this conversation to you. Carrie-Anne and I are definitely kindred spirits. We had a fantastic interaction and rapport during this recording. And here are some of the fascinating topics we discuss in this episode. What it was like to train for the original Matrix movie and what it's like to get back in the saddle again for the Matrix 4. Her belief that when you hand your child a phone or device, you're handing them a potential addiction. Choosing where and how to create boundaries for your private life when you're a public figure. Red pill moments you only experience as a mother. Introspective interrogation that you can do on yourself that she believes everyone should practice. How Shirley MacLaine became Carrie-Anne's first spiritual mentor. Intentionally creating your own community of support. How television and film can serve as self-care. Why every single person in the world could benefit from Kundalini Yoga teacher training, even more so than high school. The unequal and disrespectful ways women are treated by many doctors in the medical establishment, especially pregnant women, and what you can do to find your voice. The wonder of witnessing a really good midwife and natural childbirth. What Carrie-Anne has learned from 20 years of marriage. And finally, the inner work of parenting. So this is a fantastic and enlightening conversation, guys. I'm so happy to bring it to you. Speaking of conversations, we have many more coming up this Sunday. There'll be a bonus rebroadcast episode of my appearance on the Breaking Normal podcast. Tuesday, I'll be back with the Battle of Biohacks, the Ben Greenfield home invasion, which will also be a fantastic 2-hour YouTube video. Then Friday, another solo show, treating viruses, finding your tribe, brain mapping, and neuroplasticity. Make sure you subscribe to this show so you don't miss any upcoming episodes, including the 3 that I just mentioned. Speaking of upcoming events, 2020 is shaping up quite nicely. April 14th through 26th, I'll be speaking at Paleo FX in Austin, Texas. Then I'll be back in LA May 2nd and 3rd for Meet Delic, a psychedelic symposium of sorts. You can get tickets to all my events at lukestory.com/events. If you're interested in taking care of your health, a great way to support not only your body, mind, and spirit, but also the show is by visiting lukestory.com/store, where you will find a carefully curated collection of all my favorite things. That's lukestory.com/store. Okay, that's it, guys. As I said, get ready to drop that red pill and escape the matrix of your mind with Carrie-Anne Moss. Welcome to the show, Carrie-Anne Moss.
Thank you for having me. I love your show. I listen to it every time I'm in the car.
That's so fun.
I love everything that you're talking about. I go to your shop and I bought the Blue Blocks glasses. I got my sheets from you. I want that bed. I want the amp coil, the biocharger. I want all of it.
You know what? I forgot. I have the Zen Den up there. We could go do a biocharger session if you want afterward.
That would be great.
Super fun. Well, I love when a guest is also a listener of the podcast. And I want to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Nadine Artemis, who's been on a couple times. And I remember seeing you with her back at the Longevity Now conferences, I think. Did you went to a couple of those, right?
I went to one. I introduced her at one, I think last year.
Yeah, because I remember seeing it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, when you've seen someone in film and TV and then you see them kind of in the health scene, I'm always like, wow, that's so cool. I didn't know those Hollywood people did all this stuff, because for me, it was always this double life of being in the industry and then, you know, no one knew that I was a meditation fanatic and all these kind of things.
Yeah, well, they asked me to introduce her and it was so effortless to do that. You know, I love her so much and love what she's doing and all her products and just who she is as a person. And it was just a true honor to be able to introduce her to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really believe in her. Yeah.
I agree. So those of you listening, there's a couple shows I did with Nadine about natural skincare and sunshine and all sorts of stuff. She's amazing. And hopefully she hears this and hears the thank you. So what's the most exciting thing going on in your life right now? What are you super pumped about?
What am I pumped about? Well, life is good. Life is full. Training right now like a maniac for Matrix 4, which just got announced, I think, in August. But that was sort of mulling around in my world for about 6 months. So excited that that's actually out in the world. because I wasn't really talking about it or telling anyone about it.
Right.
Even my family, I was just keeping it really, my kids knew, and my husband obviously, but I was just keeping it pretty close to myself. So now I get to have kind of that exhale with it and like get it into action and be training for that.
I've always been curious, when you look, I was looking at your IMDB, which for those listening is like a database for actors and, well, not just actors, but everyone in the film industry, film and TV. And it, it has all of your work. It's like where you highlight your body of work. And I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, you've been like in a million movies and a zillion TV shows, like goes back to the early 90s. And it's just like, you could just scroll and scroll and scroll. There's so much work. And then I looked at you always look at the pre-production to see what someone has coming up next. And I saw The Matrix 4, which I was already aware of. And it's like release date, 2022. And I always find it fascinating that movies are in pre-production that long. Yeah. Why does it take 2 years to make a movie?
Well,
and get
I don't
it
know.
out?
I don't know if that's correct. I have no idea. I never think about all that, to be honest. I just show up and I do my part.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time, post-production and all the different things that you have to do to get a movie made. I always feel like when I go to see a movie or go to see somebody's a play or something like that, it takes so much work, so much energy. It's like, it's such a huge endeavor to do that it's kind of admirable that anybody does it, really.
Agreed.
So many pieces, so many parts, so many different departments coming together to fulfill a vision. It's quite exciting to be a part of. What does
your training entail? Are you doing like badass martial arts training and this kind of stuff?
Right now, I'm just really getting just strong and leaning out, just sort of getting ready. And then all of that will happen later. And I shouldn't really talk about it too much just because I'm in the process. I tend to not love talking about the process too much. When you're in it, makes you kind of self-conscious about it. And I don't know everything yet, but just kind of taking it one day at a time, getting ready to shoot.
So it's
really, really going to be incredible. Though.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I've never worked in film and TV. We were talking before the recording. I did work in the industry, but I did commercials and stuff and print and red carpet and all that, but I never did film and TV. And it seems like such a massive undertaking for everyone. There's so much more involved in that than just doing like a photo shoot for a magazine, which is a lot of work also and a lot of moving parts. But I was always fascinated by the process of preparation that everyone has to undergo, especially the actors that, like you said, you have to get in physical shape. And it's like, it's, the mental shape and then getting into the character and then actually learning the lines, all that stuff. It's like, wow.
It's a real big commitment. And, the first Matrix, we trained for months, like 5-6 months. We trained Monday through Friday, we spent an hour stretching and then we spent an hour kicking across the room. And then, one of us would go and work with the martial arts team to learn this particular fight. And then I'm on a wire learning this particular fight. And then it's, then I'm on a treadmill for 45 minutes and then I'm doing Pilates and then it's lunch and then I'm on a motorcycle. And that was Monday through Friday for a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's very bonding, for all of us. It was such an incredible time. It was just so much fun. And I really had to face a lot of fear to do that role.
Oh my God.
To do all of that stuff. But
I can imagine.
It was so great.
Like the physicality of it alone had to be super intense.
Yeah. Yeah. And incredibly fulfilling. Yeah. I
have a funny, it's so great that you're kind of into all the same stuff that I'm into and we have a relevant conversation ahead of us, hopefully. Well, I know we do because I don't interview actors just because they're an actor, because the show is not really about creativity. It's about building the ultimate lifestyle based on all of these different principles, and you live the lifestyle that I'm interested in. But I do have to give one anecdotal story as it pertains to spirituality, and that was years ago when The Matrix came out. I was already reading like The Power of Now at that time, and I was in addiction recovery, and so I was starting to become aware that there was a true self, and then there was this phenomenon of your personality known as your ego, and then there was a mind, and was getting a basic fundamental understanding of duality, and that I had lived most of my life really plugged into mind and didn't know any other reality, right? And so I had this spiritual teacher at the time, very unassuming, hardcore biker from Louisiana. And we went to see that film. And after the film, he's like, so what'd you think? I was like, oh, it was cool, man. Those fight scenes, this and that. I totally didn't get it. And he's like, God damn it, you weren't paying attention. He was a very like Zen, kind of smack you upside the head kind of guy. And I was like, what? No, it was cool. It was a great movie. He goes, no, you don't get it. He goes, that's what we're doing. We're unplugging from the matrix. That's what I'm doing with you. And then he explained the whole correlation. Like he saw the film from a completely different standpoint, that we're living in a facsimile of a world that's generated by our perceptions. And that all eluded me. I just thought that was cool when they flew across,
Yeah.
And he really unpacked it for me. And ever since that, it's funny because when I'm in that state where I'm becoming hypnotized in a hallucination of non-reality, I have that sensation that like I'm plugged into the matrix, and it's like become part of my vernacular of sorts.
Me too. And I was in the movie and I feel that way every day. I have a moment where I see the relevance of the movie and what it was saying and the layers that it was saying and how cutting edge it was at the time. And yet we're living it right now. We're living it so deeply. Like I feel like that movie is actually important right now for all of us. A lot of the themes in it are just really important. I love technology in many ways. And at the same time, I'm dreadfully afraid of it, especially when I see, I saw the other day a mom, she had a baby strapped onto her. I kind of saw her from the back. I was walking through the airport and she was sort of like doing this classic mother shuffle that we all have, you just know it when you've been a mom. And I was like, oh, I love babies. So I turn around to see the baby and she's giving the baby a bottle like this. And the baby's very little. And he or she is looking at the mama and the mama has the phone. And I could have cried because I know, having had children and what I believe about parenting and mothering, your children understand the sense of who they are and their self-worth by the way their mother looks at them. And we have a generation of children who are being raised by mothers who are looking at their phones. And, good people,
Yeah.
I'm doing it. And so I go back to our sutras of our Aquarian age, our Kundalini yoga teacher training, which I'm also a Kundalini yoga teacher as well. And I've been a student for 25 years. And I see that and I feel the sadness and I judge it, right? Because I instantly judge it. And then I recognize that the other person is me and that I am just as addicted and I am just as distracted as that mother is. And I worry about us. And I know that we'll be fine. I know we will evolve. I know there's a process of evolution that's happening, but it's hard to see, because it's become so normal for someone to hand their small child a phone. You're handing them addiction. And, when my kids were coming up, like, you kind of knew you shouldn't do that. It was like, the pediatric people, whatever, saying, no screens until 2 or whatever. And, whatever, right? Like now it's like
right.
all common sense is lost. And I get it that life is, hard and parenting is difficult, and can feel all consuming. But I'm concerned about that. Yeah. And I travel a lot. So I go through airports a lot. And that's when I sort of see like what's happening out there. And it's, little tiny children, walking through the airport with an iPad in their hand, tiny, like not even, like tiny. And there I am with mine too.
Right.
Probably listening to you.
The technocracy. Well, I'll give you a pass if you're listening to this show.
Okay.
When you were becoming Trinity to take on the role in the Matrix and reading the script and all of that, were you aware of the many layers of meaning behind it? Or was does it take more subjectivity or objectivity rather later on where you go, or were you having those ahas while you're going through the process?
Well, interestingly, I think probably like if you talk to Keanu, he definitely was having all those layers of intellectual understanding of the concepts, as were the directors and as were a lot of people. I think for me personally, I'm a much more kind of intuitive person. And so really, I wasn't having that intellectual play of the script. I was like really coming at it from like my heart and understanding it in like my feeling body. And even though the character is so stoic and strong, like I was understanding the love and the compassion and the humanity, and, I have all my journals since I was 10 years old. And I have an entire sequence of journals during preparing for her and writing as if I were her.
Oh, wow.
I forget, it's been 20.
Do many actors use that?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I
that's
forgot.
Cool.
And I forgot that I actually did that, until I was unpacking all my journals. And I just, I really saw her as like, a warrior wanting to, save humanity. And I delved really deeply into that, but I didn't really understand intellectually the depth, I think, until after and now. I mean, in Kundalini yoga, or even just spirituality, I'm sure you can relate to this. I'm assuming, but I remember like in the beginning, hearing concepts, hearing people talk, like Guru Singh, who's one of my teachers, hearing him speak, and I would like grab like a few pieces, but I couldn't really download it all. Like I was just sort of like, I know there's a nugget in there, but as time has passed, it's just so much easier to acclimate because we're evolving, right?
Yeah.
We're growing. And so the consciousness, it's so much, you can sit in a room now and you're like downloading it like crazy because we're ready. We're ready to accept and to be open to this, information. And so it's definitely been an evolution for me. I think I'm Canadian. I'm kind of have an innocence about me and my outlook on life. Perhaps growing up in Canada, I think, Guru Singh actually used to say, his wife's Canadian too, that we're like 10 years sort of less mature in a way.
Oh, that's interesting.
And sometimes I feel like living in the States for the last 25 years that I've lived here, I always dreamt of living in America. Like it was like my dream because, the commercials were all about like American TV and American candy and American this and that. It was like America just seemed like the place to be. I feel, and I don't know if it's maybe my age now, but like I can feel a sense of jadedness coming that's the thing that I'm kind of like looking at right now. Like, how do I remain like open-hearted and hopeful and like dreaming of the future and visualizing the future? And when a part of me at times feels really jaded by everything, and that's the daily kind of, but I was never jaded before. Like I came into Hollywood really very open and trusting, and yet at the same time, quite protective. It's an interesting thing. I don't know how I really was able to do that, but yeah, that's the big thing. Like, how do we stay open? How do we keep our hearts open while all of this is going on? While we're dealing with the climate, we're dealing with politics, we're dealing with so many things that are so overwhelming. We have so much information coming at us in this information age, and I go back to Kundalini yoga principles of, do I have the wisdom to decipher the information so that I can pick and choose what works for me today, be open to it shifting, changing, so that I know what I need. Goes back to my sadhana, being, connected to that, my spiritual practice, keeping it super simple, super sincere, so that I'm not like, trying to do something that I just can't keep up with.
It's a very strange time that we live in right now because it's, depending on your perspective, it's the best of times or the worst of times. Like I can look at things from a certain viewpoint now. I mean, just take something like 5G, right?
Yeah.
Just everyone is, I want a faster phone. Really? Do you want faster cancer? And so I can very easily, because of the conspiratorial nature of the powers that be, which again, I'm going to like keep this on a matrix thread for a minute here, that many of us are plugged in. And when you start to awaken, you sort of learn about the darkness at first, that, wow, I've been deceived by the media and I've been deceived by myself. And you start looking at your childhood trauma and you become aware of these things that we're previously asleep to. And then there's a period of like, oh, the world is a fucked place. And then how do we find the balance, right? And it's the same world, but it's really perspective. So on one hand, things are so grim and dark, but on the other hand, I mean, I meet I mean, like kids, I mean, I'm almost 50. So a kid in their early 20s kind of is a kid to me.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, I meditate and I'm into spirituality and yoga. And, they're like woke. It's really weird. The stuff that I see on social media that's very positive. It's really interesting that I can have some pretty profound and deep conversations with young people now that are quite positive, and that so many people are into personal development and self-help and all forms of therapy and clinical psychedelics and shamanic plant medicines. And I think we're in the middle of the most beautiful awakening right now.
Yeah. And it's hard. Right? It's like giving birth, Right, it's like we're birthing the new world. We're birthing our, and it doesn't happen just with, rainbows and unicorns. I mean, it doesn't, I've been doing this job in Nashville. So I commute to Nashville for this TV show that I'm doing. And there's a tea shop there. I think it's called Highline. It is one of the most beautiful portals that I've ever been in. Like I literally walked in the door and I was like, I am in another universe. And what I love, and I'm very interested in how people do business and their model of how they do business, their ethics. Is this business really in alignment with who they are? It's one of the reasons I love Nadine Artemis and Living Libations and what she's doing there. And, their hours, they open at 11, which is a bit of a drag when I have to go to work early, but that's what they want to do. They're closed on Sunday. Oh, but I right. I respect that.
Right.
And all the young people that work there, they have this kombucha bar in the back where you can get like a slat of kombuchas and they're making it there. And they've got all different kinds of like remedies and they're the herbs that they're making into tinctures, which I love, and tea, and it's incredible, and no Wi-Fi.
Oh, wow.
And the whole thing is we want people talking. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have sat at that bar and 3 hours have gone by and I'm talking to women of all ages, usually younger than me, about you. I mean, about your podcast, and they all know, we're all talking about it. It's like, it's pretty incredible. So I definitely know there's so much amazing stuff happening. The personal thing that I feel myself coming up against is just really being okay with feeling, I guess, not as excited or happy about it all. Like that there's darkness before the dawn, Like we know that metaphorically. We all know the songs. We've all been there. We've gone through dark nights of the soul and come to the other side. But being like really okay with being, I just tend to really like to feel really good. I've never really been one to drink or do drugs because I really have always loved feeling good in the morning. So that was just super clear to me from a very young age. Like, I don't feel good if I do that. So how I feel in the morning is more important to me than a moment of feeling something.
Wow. You have the rare gift of discipline.
Yeah, I think I enjoy discipline. I enjoy that realm. But yeah, it's a good time. It's a great time, but it's also, it's challenging. It challenges.
Yeah.
And you realize you're a little bit, we're in a bubble here, right? Any life is a bubble. You create your reality by who you surround yourself with, I'm sure that it'll all, it'll all unfold, and it's going to all unfold the way it's going to unfold. But there's moments where it just feels like so overwhelming. Right. But then you're looking at the news and you're getting it from the news, and that's not even the truth anyway. Like I realized I was lying in bed one day, kind of scrolling my phone in that kind of addictive way. And I was like, there is nothing to find here. Like there's nothing. Like, what am I looking for?
Right.
There's nothing here.
Right.
And I just like put it down. I was like, oh, what a relief. Like to have those moments of clarity that there's nothing on Instagram that I need. Right. There's nothing on CNN that's going to inform my life because who knows what the truth is.
It's going to be informed by someone who wants it to be informed a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a very adversarial relationship, I think, with mainstream media for that reason, because it feeds on fear, and confusion and control.
Who is at the core of it and who is financially benefiting from the point of view that's being shared.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you understand that and you are awake to that, it changes everything for you.
Yeah.
And it's a little hard at first because, there's a weather issue. You turn on CNN, right? Or whatever, you want to, it's like even the last storm, the storms that are happening. It's like, you can just feel the exploitation. It's like we're watching reality TV. And that's really disturbing.
Well, it's interesting because I think human beings have an inherent desire to know what's going on. I mean, even when we were in a tribe of 50 or 60 people, you had the elders that would kind of give the report on, your territory or other tribes or, who needed food, who needed that, and just on things that are just going on in your immediate environment, right? So we have this need to kind of like feel safe and be aware and not live in a bubble. So we're driven by that curiosity. And then if the only place to get information is someone that's going to give you that information with an agenda that doesn't serve your highest good, generally speaking, then that's kind of what we're left with. But as we were talking about earlier, thankfully we have, and I'm not, tooting my own horn here, but many people that have YouTube channels and podcasts and blogs and all the different content that's available to us where we can get an independent point of view that's not skewed by any agenda other than curiosity and the desire to uplift and encourage people and give a different point of view. It's so cool right now to be able to do that. I mean, we're around the same age. When I was a kid, there was no other media to be had than the news and the newspaper. That was it. If you wanted to be informed about the world, those were your choices.
Yeah, and you can look and you look back now. I look back and I think about the people that were in the news, like the people that, when I think of sort of this patriarchal kind of casting in a way of the news guys, that I actually felt so comforted by the casting, which, like those guys made me feel like everything was going to be okay.
Right.
And I trusted them. I remember I did something like recently on like a news thing, and there was and the next thing after me was some recall of something. And the news guy just so convincingly and so genuinely said, and after this commercial, we're going to, that it's lurking in your kitchen cabinets and it's causing havoc and we're going to get right back and it ends. And I was like, what? And he goes, I don't know. And I was like, oh my God. Right. He's just reading. It's not, like we know that, that he didn't even know what was next. He's not really, he's an actor.
That's hilarious.
I mean, that's the truth. They're actors.
Well, that brings me to my next curious round of questioning. And that is, in your career, you seem to be a bit of an anomaly. And I don't know personally that many famous actors or musicians, a few here and there due to my prior career, but you seem to have sort of carved your own path in Hollywood. Like, you're here, there's no publicist. Normally, if you would interview someone of your stature, there'd be like a whole little entourage of people, and someone would have had a chat with me about what we could talk about and what we can't talk about. And it's this whole weird Hollywood thing that I was, employed by for so long. But you seem to just kind of do your own thing, and you have your platforms that we're going to discuss, and you're empowering women and doing all this cool awakening work. But like, I don't see you in the tabloids or in scandals or, having a desire to be at every red carpet event and being trailed around by hair and makeup and a stylist and all of that. So how have you been able to keep working and have that massive IMDB, credit list, but not sort of play the Hollywood game? I find that very fascinating.
I mean, I don't know really how that all kind of happens. I think when I hit a career high with obviously The Matrix. So that was, 20 years ago, I guess, 18 or 20 years ago. And at the height of my career, I met my husband, I got married, and I proceeded to have my family. And my commitment and my desire to have a family and I'm sure there's a better word for it, but like have like a normal life was really important to me. So like when I first had my first child, the paparazzi was pretty out of control, and there weren't any laws protecting us from that. It was very upsetting. I mean, I was pretty devastated when I realized, standing outside of my house, my baby's like a couple weeks old and I'm wearing like a nursing bra, and I think he's on the boob, and like my postpartum belly is like hanging out, and I'm waving goodbye to my first visitor, and I have a row of paparazzi outside.
Oh, God.
And And
that has to suck so bad.
I mean, I
would
literally
hate that.
Did it suck? I fell to my knees and I grieved in a way that I can feel today, because I never wanted that for my kids, you know? Like, so my private life, and I'm very private, and at the same time, I'm so open. Like, you know, if I met you at the grocery store, like my children are, you know, like, Mom, do you have to talk to everybody? Like, I'm so incredibly open, but I'm incredibly private about certain aspects. And like, when it came to my kids, I was like, no way. I'm just not interested in them having a life that they have to perform in, or, you know, we would just go out and I didn't have any control over that. But eventually you go, oh, when I go to Cross Creek Mall, which I used to love, the paparazzi are there. So I no longer go there. You know, Brentwood Country Market. Like, I used to love going there, but every time I would go, they would all be there. So I stopped going there. I mean, I think you realize pretty quickly if you know, that there's certain places that you don't deal with it. And honestly, for the first 10 years of my mothering, I was at home, you know, creating a rhythm. I think having kids really changed my life in a lot of really amazing ways, really healed me in a lot of ways. And one of the things that I was really excited about, and that I really, really kind of grew to love, was the rhythm of kids. You know, you have to, you know, I'd never really cooked. You know, now I cook like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know?
Wow.
And I didn't know how to do that. I had to teach myself. I had to learn that. And I learned to care about that. And I learned to, it's one of the things I share a lot on Annapurna Living about, which is my lifestyle website, is, you know, how do you make these mundane things that can sometimes feel like a real drag? How do you make them fuel you? I had to figure that out, because it was my reality. And I often felt that way, even acting. If I was on a location somewhere and I would start to be missing, say, my husband, or missing home, and I would be wishing I was somewhere else, I would practice, be right here, right now, enjoy this right now. This will be over before you know it. I applied that same principle in my acting, and then I came into my mothering and I applied that. Like, this is going to be over so quickly. Don't, you know, waste it wishing you were doing something else, wishing you were somewhere else. Be here. Let it teach you. Let it be your teacher. And so I've really looked at my life as my greatest teacher. And whatever is coming up for me, you know, like what I'm, you know, I didn't even realize until we're talking, like, I am sort of facing sort of this jaded moment that I've never really experienced before. I've never been a jaded person. So for me, I'm going to get curious about that. Probably write a little bit about it. Just like, you know, my dreams might show me something about that. And I'm curious about it. We're also like at a new moon, which I often like, new energy comes up where I'm kind of like, okay, what's kind of getting at me, you know? And it gives me information, gives me intel for my own personal journey. So I just really wanted to build like a really normal life. And I have like a husband who really supported me in that and who wanted the same thing. So we just stayed home. And I said no to everything. I say no to pretty much everything unless it's really career oriented, like a job that I'm doing, or it's my kids. I say no to everything. Like, I'm saying yes to this because I like adore you. And like, I couldn't wait to come and talk to you. But I don't usually say yes to this, you know?
Yes. Score.
You know, it's not something I'm not looking to do this, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's not, being on the Lifestylist podcast, let's face it, is probably not going to have a huge impact on your life.
I love talking to people, and I need as much inspiration in my own life to, you know, information, wisdom, and I want to feel hopeful and excited about things. And you and I are very similar in a lot of ways. And so I was like really excited to talk to you because I want to be around people that, you know, are kind of on the same path, you know?
So when you took the period off to really focus on your kids, did you get flack from management and publicists, et cetera? And was it difficult to kind of emerge? And, you know, when your kids were kind of to an age where they required less direct attention from you, were you like, hey, I'm back? Was there any like, oh, you like, you missed your window or any of that, or was it relatively easy to get back to work and kind of get back into the machine, so to speak?
It's a process. I mean, the business is brutal. I mean, Hollywood is a brutal business for women, period. So, I mean, I was having my first baby at 36, my second at 38, and my third at 41. So it just naturally, I remember literally people all say, oh, when you hit 40, like it changes, and you kind of go, oh, it's not going to happen to me. What does that mean? I don't believe in that. And then literally I remember like on my 40th birthday, like reading a script and reading the part and thinking about it. And then my manager going, oh, no, you're the grandmother, or something like that. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, did that really happen, that I went from the lead girl to the older woman? I mean, it really does. And, and the guy is like 60 and you're supposed to be his like what partner. And you're like, you kind of have to have a sense of humor about the business,
right?
To be able to navigate it. And, I love my business. I love what I do. And, so I had to, just sort of do more of that inner work, right? That inner work to kind of stay in it and stay hopeful. And, there's no one way to do it. And I just kind of knew my path is my path, and there's been times when it's really hard to get a job, and other times where it's, a perfect job just comes to you. I mean, it's hard to make a living as an actor. I think 1% of all actors in SAG make over $10,000. I mean, I've made my living as an actor my whole life, my whole adult life of working. So I know how lucky I am. I know how that's not the norm. So yeah.
I wonder, I don't know if there's a way to quantify the percentage, but I wonder how many people move to Hollywood and want to become a rock star or famous actor or actress out of a sense of inherent, a sense of low self-worth and, like from an egoic motivation to be somebody and be recognized, versus how many people just have an art that's burning a hole in them that they have to express, like the Jimi Hendrix would be an example in music. I mean, there's no way that guy wasn't going to play music, but he was probably motivated by that more so than like, if I'm famous, I'm going to be somebody, So I always find it interesting looking at artists that are, I guess, more on the celebrity end of artists versus some obscure painter that only people in the art world know, but say actors and musicians, kind of celebrities. It's like, how do you avoid having your inherent sense of worth and ego tied up in that versus just wanting to make art regardless of who knows? Like, if no one ever booked you on a film, would you be making little home movies and, acting at the local playhouse where you live in Idaho or something, had you not moved to Hollywood? I don't know that there's a question in that. It's just,
well, I think
I sometimes ponder that dynamic and that propensity for people to want the validation, and then not necessarily out of art, but just out of wanting to kind of feel
out
like
of their
they're
wound, out of their personal wound. And I think that's one of the conversations you've been having with Lacey Phillips, and I've been watching her work too, because a lot of what she talks about, I did naturally coming up in my career. So I think it's so interesting to listen to it reflected back. She's articulating it so beautifully. I mean, I had to do a lot of work on that stuff for myself. So when I was coming up as an actor here, I knew nobody, I had no money. I moved here, I had no green card. I mean, it was challenging, but I had like this vision. Like I was probably, because I was impacted by a lot of TV growing up. So I had this idea of being an actor since I was super tiny. Came here and, trying to get a job. It's super hard. You get a job and you get some money and it's like, you feel so good. And then suddenly you're not working and your money's running out. And I remember I used to go see Marianne Williamson speak every Tuesday in Santa Monica. And she would talk a lot. It's interesting because she was talking about all the same stuff she's talking about now, which I think is pretty cool. Like she's definitely, this isn't new, what she's talking about now. She's been talking about this for years. And I remember her talking about actors and in particular, and that she had never met a group of people who judged their industry so deeply and hated it, but wanted it, like wanted what it could give them. Like, like screw you, but give me everything. Like give me, but I hate you. And then she talked about how actors had to feel like they were enough when they were on their couch unemployed. And that was what I looked at that and I was like, I want to get to that place where I can be on my couch, not working and feel like I'm enough, because there's so much low self-worth, I think, with a lot of us. And not that I have low self-worth, but I definitely was probably proving something to different people in my life, or subconsciously was proving like that I was enough. You hear that a lot, like not feeling enough, right? And that became my spiritual journey that I went through, was completely in order to support me to be able to do what I do and not lose my mind and not sell out and feel like I was enough. And so really my spiritual growth was completely aligned with my acting and my career. So like when I was thinking about, will I make it? Will I ever get a job? I had to really connect to, if I really love what I do, and it's really a pure desire from the universe. I believe in soul form, as I believe each of us in that soul, as we're coming into the world, are given our soul's dream, our desire, our wish. And I asked myself, is this desire to be an actor really pure? And if it really is pure, then I should be happy being in acting class. That should be enough. And I got there. And I was like, yep, I love this so much. And then I could forget about anything else, getting a job or figuring all that out. Like I was like, I believe that that this gift is pure. I've unraveled it. I've gone inside it. I've, evacuated the different things. I've unraveled it, and I trust that it will happen for me. And I got there. That's where I got to. But just before The Matrix came, I kind of thought, this is as good as it gets for me. Like I make a living as an actor. I'm doing TV, not really great TV. TV wasn't what TV is now, but I'm making a living as an actor. I bought a house right down the street because I drove by it on the way here. And I thought, I always dreamt of being a movie star, but maybe that's my ego. Like maybe what's that about? Like I'm a tradesman, tradeswoman. Like I make a living doing this. And I kind of let it go. And I was up for a role on a TV show about a month before I got The Matrix, or maybe weeks. And I was supposed to test for it. So, you go through this audition process. And it was kind of, remember Xena,
Sure.
Xena or whatever?
Big fan.
Big fan. Yeah. So it was kind of like one of those kinds of shows. And it was being produced by I want to say Sean Cassidy or his brother. And I grew up with their posters on my walls. I mean, I was in love with Scott Baio and all these different, teen beat guys, right? And they wanted me to test for this role. So you got to remember, this is totally pre-Matrix. So, I'm like nobody. And it's for this role of this queen. And I wasn't sure because I thought it was going to be cheesy. And it was if it's cheesy, I really don't want to do it. I need the money, but I don't want to do cheesy. And so they called me at home. So Sean Cassidy calls me at home. I don't remember if it was him or his brother. I can't remember. But, I'm on the phone and my TV's muted and it's Xena Princess Warrior is on TV. And he's telling me it's not going to be that. It's going to be really, really classy and just really elegant. And you're the queen. And I was he really said everything I wanted to hear. And so I was okay, I'll test for it. So I'm about to test for it. I'm lying in the bath. My lawyer calls, my manager calls, my agent calls, and it's a three-way. And they're we need to talk to you. And I was lying in the bath. And I said, okay. They have my manager, who's still my manager, who I've had for almost, 30 years. She says, Bob, you tell her. So Bob's my agent, my lawyer. He says, Carrie-Anne, they just want you to know when you go into test tomorrow, could you dress sexier? And I said, I pass. And he's like, are you sure? I said, I pass. Because if the comment I'm getting right now is that I need to dress sexier, for the role that this producer just sold to me of being this elegant queen, then they're not making the show that he just told me. And if I'd done that show, I would never have been available for The Matrix. Lacey Phillips would say I passed a test. That was a massive test. And I remember in that moment going, wow, I'm saying no. It was a lot of money. I was broke.
How much money would have been a lot of money at that point?
I can't even remember. But 22 episodes times whatever they were paying. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Well,
it was substantial.
It was substantial,
anyway.
But it made, I was like, you kind of as an actor, you like make money, then you run out, then you make money, then you run out,
Yeah.
But I was really clear that I wasn't going to do that. And it's interesting because then The Matrix came and I kind of had given up my dream of like movies. Like that's not going to happen for me. And I went into audition for it and I was like, Keanu Reeves, like I'm ever going to get this. And the casting director looked at me and she said, yeah, you know what? I'm going to bring you back. Work on it. Because I hadn't really worked on it because I was going through a little bit of a like letting go, I guess, in a way. I went home and I worked on it. Just kept showing up because I did like 6 or 7 auditions for that.
Oh God, that's got to be so nerve-wracking.
And I remember at one point, one of my agents at the time, I was going to screen test with Keanu and I just was screaming in my car. I was so excited. And he goes, whoa, don't get too excited. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get really, really fucking excited because this is the biggest thing that's ever happened to me in my career. If I can't celebrate this right here, right now, because I probably won't get it. And I remember thinking, he won't be my agent for much longer. And he wasn't. Because I didn't want someone to go, oh, keep it down. You know what I mean?
Oh, hell no.
Don't like celebrate this victory, which felt like a victory at the time.
I mean, even when you're in that place in any career and even just getting an opportunity to be in the running is already a victory. It's already a win.
Huge.
You know what I mean? If you have that perspective.
Yeah. And and I chose that, like everyone, I was just like, I am just so grateful to be here and I'm just going to enjoy it and just savor it. And if my name is on this role, I will get it. And if it's not, if it's someone else's purpose and like part of their life's work and their life's purpose, then I will celebrate them. Like I didn't have that competitive feeling any longer in the business at all, because I really trusted that if it was meant to be mine, that it would come to me.
That's so wild that you were starting to grasp this perspective that early on of what I hear is a surrender of the fate of your art and your career. And like, hey, it's going to be what it's meant to be. And if someone else is supposed to have that role, I find that most people, including myself, absolutely arrive at that place of surrender and trusting the will of the highest good or God or however you want to name it, that it usually comes after getting crushed. You know what I mean? Then we become humbled into going, hey, maybe there's a source of omniscient intelligence and benevolence here that has my back and knows what's best. But, those of us, especially I think that are driven by our will to succeed and achieve and all that we really have to get our ass kicked before we're able to surrender. And it sounds like somehow you had this inner gift where you were able to be in process of career development and having these opportunities happen at one level. And without having everything go completely tits up, still surrender through that process and get the reward of passing that test, which at the time would have been, your biggest role, obviously, and put you completely on the map permanently and the records of Hollywood eternally, I would think. So it's interesting that you just kind of arrived at that through your own inner work without total devastation of the ego.
Well, I
that's
wanted
usually
to
required.
really thrive. I really wanted to thrive in my life. And I could see how, like, my mom always would say she'd come visit me. And, I was pretty young. And I would have an audition and I just would let it go. And she was just like, wow. And I just was just so dedicated that I wanted to grow. And I mean, LA, I came here to be an actress, but when I first got here, I'd read Shirley MacLaine's book, right? One of her books. And she wrote about the Bodhi tree, the bookstore.
Oh, I used to love that bookstore. Oh my God.
I wanted to go there.
That's where I bought all my incense.
Yeah, me too. And I wanted to go there, and I have no idea where I am. I got my Thomas guide, right? I'm in like a friend's car, and there I see a parking spot, and I think I'm kind of in the area, and I pull into it. And if you remember Bodhi Tree, there's never any parking out there. And I look, and there it is, right there. And I go in, and I walk in, and I'm walking through, and another Shirley MacLaine book like literally falls at my feet, and I pick up the book. And I read it. And I mean, she was probably my first like introduction into spirituality, into like that there was more to think about, to know. And I think what I loved when I really had my awakening, which was, I mean, relatively young, if I think about it now, was that I decided and realized I could believe whatever I chose to believe. And when I really grasped that, and I like cut ties with any dogma that I'd been raised with. And I wasn't raised religious. And so I think in a way that was kind of a benefit, because I always had a very spiritual connection to God and the universe since I was very little. That just was my natural relationship, even to meditation. And I was very like ignited by the word meditation. I didn't even know what it was, or yoga or health food. And I didn't grow up in that environment at all. But like, I was like, I would see it and I would go to it. Do you know what I mean? Like my eye would land on it. And so when I realized like, you know, I didn't have to, no one else had to believe what I believed. Like if I believed that if this has my name on it, what did that do for me when I was acting and going into these very high pressured situations? When I really believed that if it had my name on it, it was mine, I no longer had desperation.
Oh, right.
And desperation is, and I even now, in the journey that I'm in now, it's like in reclaiming, you know, this role, right? Like going into this role again and training and all of that. I want no desperation. There's no beauty there. There's no joy there. There's nothing I'm interested in that comes out of desperation. And I really realized that pretty young, that I wanted freedom. That's always been my thing. I want to feel free. I want to go into a room in an audition and feel like I can be free. And I'm not saying I always was able to do that. I failed at that. And when I failed at that, I went home and I went, I'm going to crack the code for myself that I can do this. Because if I can't do this part, I better just go back to Canada and do something else, because this isn't going to be fun. I don't want to be miserable. I don't want to be like, and I definitely knew I didn't want to get older and be like, you know, freaking out about that, you know?
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, I don't want that in my life.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about that, the energy field of desperation, because it's such a repellent for opportunity too, you know? So I'm sure that inadvertently that's been one of the secrets to your success, in that when you walk in a room and you don't want anything, it piques curiosity. It's attractive to people when you have a kind and open, yet take it or leave it. Yeah. You know, it's like, imagine you go on a date, you know, and you're like, oh my God, I have to have this person. It's like, oh God, needy, get out of here.
Right. Red flag, red flag.
Yeah. But if you're sort of nonchalant and
you're yourself and you're deeply comfortable with who you are. And I'm not saying like I was really good at this. Like, I mean, this was a process, you know, but I was very clear very early on that was the work. The acting, that was kind of easy. It's actually the other work to actually get in the room, stay in the room, thrive in the room, thrive in the work, thrive in the lifestyle. You know, that's the stuff that I knew that I was really interested in. Because if that stuff's not working, that doesn't matter how famous you are, how much money you have. It doesn't matter. So I've put a lot of my energy and attention on that.
Do you find that over time, as you track experiences in which you might have had attachment and then it doesn't happen, and then as a little time passes, you see the opportunity that was meant for you, that you're able to sort of catalog those and store those up to give you more resilience against future attachments? Do you know what I mean? It's like, say you're at, like, years ago, I had this fashion school called School of Style. Well, I still have it. And stylists were like a really big deal with unscripted TV, right? And so we'd be approached by all these companies that wanted to make all these. It happened maybe 2 or 3 times. where they want to make a reality show about our school because it was kind of a unique thing and a thing that was hot in the industry. And one time was like Rachel Zoe's producers, the production company that did her show, and we're like, oh my God, we're going to be rich and famous and all this stuff. And then it just sort of like they sign you on to this sort of development deal for a year because they don't want anyone else to get you, and you're sitting around going, what the fuck happened with that thing? And eventually they'll just call you or just blow you off, and they'll just be like, nah, never mind. And it just was a non-thing. But meanwhile, I was pretty excited about it. After that happened a couple times, and then I was able to see all these other amazing things that unfolded because I wasn't busy doing that dumb, probably lame reality show. Like our company would have been tanked in terms of our business structure, just our ability to actually operate as a business. We probably would have been killed by trying to make a TV show about the business. But I didn't know that up front. I was just like, oh my God, we're losers. No one wants us. There goes my dream of, whatever I thought my dream was. But it took a bunch of those for me to be able to take the disappointments that I might face now in stride of wanting something to go, oh no, I trust God. I trust that there's that there's a plan, but it's very hard to get there unless you've been able to track a bunch of those experiences. Has that do you build on those? Yeah,
I think absolutely. I mean, you think about like love, right? You think about when you're younger and the relationships that didn't work, and you think it's the end of the world, and yet you can see like now, like, thank God those didn't work and that you are where you are. I mean, I think looking back at your life, again, I think your life is like, my life is my medicine. Your life is your medicine. It's like there's sometimes like you were saying you were, I was listening to a podcast on the way here.
That's great. That's great. I was listening to a podcast of you on the way here today too. Yeah. It's a funny way to get to know people, right? It's like we listen to each other's interviews and
if you live in LA, you're just driving so much. And so, you're just like, it becomes something that I enjoy doing, right? Is driving now because I'm like, I'm right in the middle of that podcast that Luke's doing. I gotta finish, getting the gold,
that's so funny because I feel kind of lonely right now, and I don't really talk to my friends a lot. And part of the reason is because I always listen to goddamn podcasts in my car, and I'm like, oh, I should call my friend and like have some connection.
Right, because we used to all talk on our phones in the car. I don't really do that anymore either.
No, I'm like, I want to listen to this podcast anyway.
But I think that is so important. That I think there is a loneliness that a lot of us are feeling because I think we have to really make intentional community. Like that's my biggest thing right now is a community is everything for me. And I don't have a lot of time to build it, but even if it's just simple, coming together and like really making that effort to come together with the people that we need, because we're so isolated, even though we have this opportunity with social media and with our phones, and we can talk to, people. My mom lives in Europe right now, so I can talk to her, but it's important to come, person to person, touch to touch and food to food. And
thank you for the reminder of that.
It's so important. I mean, community, I was wishing for community for a long time, like really like, every moon phase, just sort of like going, oh, I'm aching for community. Because mothering can be quite isolating, especially when children are little. And now I can say, like, I don't have this huge community, but I have a community where I feel like I can just really have that exhale when I'm with, a few of my friends and their husbands and their children, and everyone's just sort of hanging out. And it isn't perfect, It doesn't look like anything you could see on Instagram, It's real people. And, everybody's dealing with something and we're all just there.
What were you going to say right before that?
I don't know.
I derailed you. You were talking about driving around, listening to podcasts.
I was listening to you and I heard something on the podcast that made me think, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Sometimes I get excited and then I derail the topic for a moment.
That's okay. It's normal.
Do you, right now in your life, watch a lot of TV and go to a lot of films and things like that? Are you immersed in the art as a fan?
Well, when I had my kids, I completely went off all media because when you first have children, at least for me, like you're so open and vulnerable that things would just impact me too much. I would be just like devastated, like so easily. So I didn't watch anything for a long time. I've been working pretty steadily for the last, I think, 5 years. And I've been traveling a lot for the work, which was pretty unusual for my family structure. I was definitely at home all the time. So my family really had to adjust to me suddenly. You know, mom's not at home. And one of the things that I ended up doing when I would go to New York, I was working in New York, I did a Marvel show for 3 seasons, was I would just binge watch like shows. And I fell in love with so many things. TV is so great right now. I love documentary films. I don't really go to the movies all that often, but I enjoy documentaries and I love getting a show that I'm just like, can't get enough of. And then I go long stretches of time watching absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find I don't really watch TV unless I'm in a relationship. It's like one of the
something you do together.
Yeah. It's actually one of the sweet things of being in a relationship is just hanging out and watching TV. I think it's special to me because I don't really do it. Like I was in a relationship. So when I moved in here, I put a TV like in the bedroom. It's kind of a weird house. The bedroom is huge and living room small. So I put I made a little den kind of TV zone in the bedroom. Yeah, and it's really awesome. And then now I walk in there like, God damn it, I should watch TV. And I just feel like kind of a loser watching TV by myself. I'm just like, it's like I'm wasting time. I feel like I don't need to be entertained. I should be learning something or working on something. You know,
I know. I started to feel like my nervous system like kind of needs that.
Right.
You know, like
I'm just mindlessly sort of just tuning out and
and being expanded. I mean, I watched Sense8, which is an incredible series on Netflix. That is
what's that?
It's called Sense8. The Wachowskis, who are the Matrix directors and writers, created the show. It was, I mean, I felt like a better person after watching that show.
Really,
I just felt like my compassion and my understanding and my love. I felt like my mind was so expanded. And I, you know, there's a lot of shows that I'm not really watching shows to just zone out.
Okay.
I'm getting pretty inspired, or like even on network television, like This Is Us. I mean, I had no idea that show had so many layers of like inner child, like showing like the trauma that happens at childhood and how it manifests later. Like that is an incredible idea. That is such a true thing that most of the world doesn't understand. That your childhood affects your adulthood.
They don't?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that I don't think they do. And to see on mainstream television,
that's cool
that they're exploring it like that. So, I mean, I'm a real big fan of TV and film for what it does for culture and how it impacts. I go in and out though of wanting to, you know, right now I have this thing for the last few years where I really want to laugh. So we watch a lot of Modern Family as a family, Practical Jokers. I mean, just like silly stuff, just because I want to hear the sound current of laughter in my home. I want to hear myself laugh. And so I make that actually like, I know that's part of my self-care is that I need that.
That's very cool. Yeah. My dad years ago when he was, you know, he's like me. He's just constantly working on himself and tries everything. But he was doing this, I think it was suggested by a therapist where he would watch really sad movies just to cry, just to be able to access his emotions.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then there was like, okay, a period of that. And then a period of watching funny stuff just to laugh. And that's, I didn't take the sad route because I'm like, I'm fucking sad enough. I don't need help crying many times in life. But I like watching stand-up comedy on Netflix.
Yeah, me too.
That's one thing like
it's
by
so
myself.
fun.
I'm like, if I'm feeling sort of bored or lonely, I'm like, comedy is going to be good for me.
But I would be interested in looking at like why you judge yourself for wanting to just, I'm not saying that you are, but I understand like you, it's like all my books that I have are like to learn. Like, you know, I'm always like, you know, parenting or Kundalini yoga or consciousness. It's all like education for me. And so I'm like, God, I want to read a book where I just get lost in a story. And it's actually really hard for me to actually do it because I've so many years of like, it's work. So I'm making myself like get in the bath and, you know, although I'm reading Many Lives, Many Masters again right now. And you know, it's kind of both, right? Teaching and storytelling. But yeah, it's like, why do we judge ourselves for not feeling like we're being productive, you know? It's like,
I struggle with that a lot.
I think that's one of the reasons I was like that a lot until I had kids. And I think that's one of the reasons why I loved, like when I first got pregnant, like I felt like I was actually successful and doing something, just growing, I was growing this baby. Like I was enough and I didn't have to, be in the grind, of like that hamster wheel. And I definitely, get in that hamster wheel. Like it's my nature. I'm like pretty fast moving, I like to get a lot done. People would laugh that I got more done before 9 than people would throughout the whole week.
Are you a morning person?
I love the morning. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. You do sadhana, huh?
Yeah.
What time do you wake up if you have the luxury of getting that in?
Well, I mean, I try to do my sadhana every morning.
You're getting up at like 5 or something crazy? Oh my God.
Sometimes if I will go through a phase, it's usually around this time of year, like any minute now, I'm waiting for myself to have that. I need that early morning sadhana. I get up at 6.
That's reasonable
in general, but I do go through phases where it's 4:30 or 5, where I get woken up, go to do my sadhana, and to me, it's like the most majestic, most incredible thing to do. But then I will get wiped out from it, and need to like go back to 6 o'clock. Like I'm not dogmatic with my practice at all. It's not like it has to be like that. I mean,
yeah. It makes it a lot less fun when you are. I'm going back to the Bodhi tree. I have so many memories of that particular time.
I can't believe it's gone.
I think it's an All Saints now or something. But did you ever go to the Artist Way workshops?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was into the Artist Way, but I don't know if I went to any of the workshops. I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I was deep into all that.
Yeah.
Morning pages and Agape. Right. I mean, I went to Agape when it was tiny, And,
you know what's funny? I've never been to Agape. I used to go see Marianne Williamson talk all the time for years and all that.
We were probably in the same room.
Right? But for some reason, I never made it to Agape. And I love Michael Beckwith. In fact, I want to get him on the show. He's kind of on my list of people to...
Yeah. I went to Agape in the very beginning. And I mean, it was so incredible. I mean, whoa.
That's what I hear.
That was a big part of my tool belt. Went to Al-Anon. I had a lot of tools from Al-Anon that I still use today. Like, I think those are some of the best tools and free. Anyone can go to an Al-Anon meeting. I think pretty much everybody could use it. That definitely helped me, and continues to be a big part of what I lean on, even when I don't realize I'm leaning on it because it's so deeply in me.
Back to the Hollywood machine, and watching TV and film and appreciating the art of it. Something that I've always sort of struggled with, and I think more so now that I don't work in that industry, is there's so many great people in this town. I mean, just amazing people like you, and the community here and the connections I have here. One of the main things that anchor me to this city, even though it's kind of a love-hate relationship, just because I love being in the country more than the city. But as I appreciate the art here, and I love film, and even the odd TV show when I don't feel guilty for wasting time watching it. But I love music. I love going to the Hollywood Bowl, seeing some music, all of that. But I've become more aware of some of the dark underbelly of Hollywood that I think I was oblivious to when I was more involved in it in terms of my career. And there's a lot of influential people here, say that work in the film industry and are advocates for things like gun control and women's rights and the environment and these kind of things. And I find that there's a lot of hypocrisy in this town because there is this sort of unspoken underbelly where you have people covering for pedophilia rings at Disney and the Harvey Weinsteins and just the crazy depravity going on, while at the same time people give a lot of people a pass and they're giving a convicted child rapist a standing ovation at the Oscars. And I'm going like, well, what? There's a lot of mixed messages, or owning 4 homes and flying around in a private jet, espousing about global warming, but only for the people in the Midwest, or wanting to take the guns away. But we're making all our money promoting gun violence on TV and film, and everyone has a security guard that's strapped to the hilt. It's like, it's a weird town from that perspective because people have a big voice and they have an opportunity to really have a positive impact. But sort of behind the scenes, there's all these things that don't add up. And it's something it doesn't necessarily get in the way of my day-to-day life, but
you think about it.
Yeah, it's something I observe, and it does kind of irk me if I go on Twitter and I'm like, really, dude? What about why don't you call this thing out of that thing? There's all these strange exceptions. And I think I've become more aware of it because we have such a polarized political climate now, and Hollywood is so radically left in many ways. And within that dogmatic point of view, I find there's a lot of hypocrisy in general. So I don't know if there's a question in there, or how do you reconcile that?
Well, I just think it's systemic of like everywhere, and it's like, I'm personally like people that have integrity, that like that who they are is who they are. And there aren't a lot of people that really are living that true integrity. So I try to not judge other people, although I have to say I'm a very judgmental person by nature. It's a challenge to not judge. It's probably one of my biggest, is it the fourth step in Al-Anon or fifth step? I had to really like look at my self-righteousness and my judgment.
Maybe that's what I'm doing. I'm like, you hypocrites.
But I even, I feel it even in the self-help movement and in the spiritual movement and in the yoga community. And it's like, if I don't feel like someone is like really has the integrity of through and through, or showing one aspect and giving people the idea that this should look this way, and aren't really showing the truth of how complicated life can be. I mean, all of these subjects are very complicated. And so I haven't really thought a lot about it, that question, in the way that but I can see what an incredible question that is, and one that I think is very, very worth looking at. And I also think that like all of those things are happening everywhere in some way. And, it's like, I just try to keep my eyes on myself and my own integrity.
There's that Al-Anon.
That's my Al-Anon. And at the same time, I used to be the kind of person that just say someone I was liking or in the spiritual movement had something I didn't like, then I would want to just throw them away. Because, now I don't feel that way anymore. Now I can see that, you take what you like, leave the rest. Again, an Al-Anon quote. But, everyone has their journey and their path. And I'm, I don't know the answer for everybody, or what people need to be or to know or to feel in a moment, So I just try to like keep kind of with my own, like, who am I showing up to be, and keep my eyes there. And that doesn't mean like, it also means like saying, no, I don't want to be around that. I don't want to be around that. I don't like that. And I don't know if there's an answer to any of it.
I don't know that there is either. Just an observation, perhaps.
No, it makes sense. I like that observation. It's a good one because
it's my teenage punk rock observation. Because one thing that I've always, and I used to be a very fake, dishonest thief literally, I was like not a great person earlier in life. But as I started to become more righteous in my own desire for self-preservation, I became a really honest person. And so I think that at times, perhaps I'm triggered by that because I know that in my past, my shadow side was very dishonest. And
I think we're triggered by that.
Highly hypocritical. And so deception is one thing that I find very triggering. And when you have, a town like this where most of the world's media and influence is coming from, and there's so much deception and so much hypocrisy, and also a lot of very talented and well-meaning and beautiful people in the artist communities that we have here. It's just like, God, sometimes it's frustrating to go, we could be doing so much good if people were perhaps a little more integrous, to use the word that you used. But at the end of the day, it's like, what the fuck am I going to do if, people get caught up on causes that I think are phony and fronts for corporate interest or whatever, concepts that I believe to be true. I think that your distinction of just stay on my own side of the street, don't fight the darkness, make the light brighter. That's the thing I always have to kind of bring myself back to.
It's not easy, No,
it's not.
I mean, it's really, and I really look at like whatever's triggering me as real, like I always say, like, I hate ticks. right? Like, right? And
I do too.
Okay,
I'm with you.
okay,
Fuck ticks.
yeah, but I hate ticks, right? Like I've got like a real issue with ticks. I hate sneaky people. I hate sneaky shit. I hate stuff like, and that's what ticks are, right? They're so sneaky. Like you could not even know they're there, you know? So I kind of like want to master that, like facing that fear that something could be happening that I don't know. Like it's a controlling aspect of my personality too, you know, probably, you know, from my childhood of like controlling things. I mean, it all goes back, as we know, to early things. And so it's like when I'm triggered, what if I can notice quickly enough to dig into that trigger and get a little curious about it. There's usually some good stuff there for me.
I just totally had an awakening.
What?
Well, I deeply resent oppressive, manipulative entities that take advantage of and rapaciously harm other people. And as you were talking, I was like tracing back. I mean, you know, I can have like a mini ayahuasca journey right here. And I was like, oh, fuck. When I was a kid, I was neglected and abused and perpetrated upon. And so like those fuckers, you know, so it's that. So now there's like a sense of not only protecting myself, because I don't really feel I need protecting. I'm, you know, my own man and I'm capable of holding space for myself and having boundaries and whatnot most of the time. But now I have a sense of obligation for the people that are innocently persecuted or victimized. And that comes from just, you know, being a compassionate person. But I think it's most triggering to me because I've had that experience, you know.
And other people won't be triggered by that at all, but they'll be triggered by something that you go, well, God, I can't believe that triggers them. But I'm with you. Like, you know, those triggers are like, they're showing us something and can often be the thing that makes someone an activist and make them make change and make them, it's actually really a good thing, you know? So I try to look at that, like when I feel triggered, because like I got triggered the other day, really big time by some kids that were like, we were doing like a peace thing for the environment, you know, like a rally kind of in our neighborhood. And some teenagers just were really disrespectful. And I have a real issue with disrespect. Like if I feel disrespected, I like I do not like that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's my number one.
Big one for me. Me too. And I was angry at the way that these kids were being. They were like throwing plastic on all the kids that were there.
Oh, God.
I mean, it was just so, but they were just really kind of aggressive and very like, I know, with straws. It sounds so silly, but it was,
God, that's so messed up.
Lots of little kids there. It was just, you know, and I was just so mad. I talked about it for days, right? I got a picture of one of the kids, you know, I'm like, you know, mad. And then last night I'm in the kitchen with my husband and I'm like, you know, I've been so mad about that. And then I just start crying. I said, but I'm actually really sad about it. Underneath that is a pain, right? That this person that these kids are like, don't care or something, or that they're so desensitized. So it's like that fighter in me that wants to just beat the crap out of this kid because I've thought about it.
Which you probably could based on all your training.
But and you're like fight, you know, your thing underneath it is actually a lot of sadness for the little kid that was treated that way. You know, you can have all the boundaries in the world and have healed all that stuff, which we all hopefully are doing and working on. But at the end of the day, you can still have like, God, I'm sad. And so I had a little cry in the kitchen, almost just had a cry right here because I can feel that, you know? And I go, then I offer my self-compassion. This is work that I do. I do it on Entrepreneur Living with this parenting coach, Natalie Christensen, who I love, who you have to have on your show. She's taught me so much about making room for my feelings, which I did not make room for a long time because I was so passionate about never being a victim that I could rise above anything. And it was like my superpower. Like I could just rise above and just get to the other side. And she really like helped me to kind of make room because you have kids and kids have feelings. And, you know, I'm my first son. I mean, God Poor guy, I'd be like, let's turn that feeling around, like thinking I'm giving him a tool, right? No, make room for the feelings. Let now I make so much room for feelings in our family because, you need to be able to go through your feelings. And I remember saying to my husband when I first started doing this feelings work, I said, I may cry for a while. And, a few months in, he was like, really? He's still crying. And I was like, yeah, there's so much that we all go through, that we build so much armor, that we protect ourselves so that we can really show up. And if we don't have somewhere to let it go and have the cry, and you say you're quite in touch with that, which is a beautiful thing. I really didn't make any room for that because I didn't want it. I didn't want to waste time. I had places to go, people, things to do, and I didn't want to be weak or something. So that's been really huge for me. And I think underneath all of whatever we're feeling, activated against, we're triggered by, underneath it is usually a lot of pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really an amazing skill to build, is to be able to go inward as quickly as possible and find the fear or the hurt that's there underneath that.
And being okay with when you can't do it quickly.
Right.
Being okay with that, because again, you and I, because of how our brains work, I've recognized myself so deeply in you. It's like we'll judge ourselves for not being able to get over that quickly enough because we know better. We can rise above. We understand that. We know how to do that. We've trained ourselves to do that. We've done Kundalini yoga. We understand all of those things intellectually. But sometimes we're in a season of grief. And I really didn't make room for that. And now I can see the benefit of allowing myself not to quickly get over everything.
Right.
That going on to the other side, now I feel like I have more resilience,
the spiritual bypass thing, or emotion, maybe perhaps emotional bypass, I mean, my whole life, dude, my entire life was geared and designed very specifically and chemically for a long time to not feel anything. And when you're a boy, I think it's safe to say, to give a generalization, that as a male, at least in the time when I came up in the 70s and 80s, especially with a really badass dad who I love now, but crying was not on the fucking menu. You know what I mean? And so the only emotions that were sort of safe to express were ones that were, I guess,
more masculine in nature.
Yeah.
Like macho in nature.
Yeah, like being a badass or whatever.
I see that a lot, in baseball or something, or on the sports field. You see these little kids and you see them all the dads working through their stuff. And it's so evident. And, and again, you try not to judge it. You know what I mean? We gotta go through our stuff. And sometimes it's not pretty. And sometimes we really make mistakes, and we make mistakes with our parenting and with our kids and relationship. I mean, and I think long-term relationships that actually can withstand that kind of thing, make room for that, and that's not everybody's up for that.
Yeah. I've noticed that. Yeah. It's an interesting time, I think, because most men that I know now are learning, I guess there's just the circle that I run with, but are learning how to explore their, I don't want to say feminine side, but just
the feminine energy. Well, we all have masculine and feminine energy. I mean,
just, the idea that emotions don't have to be squelched and avoided at all costs, and that when you do, there's going to be a price to pay, that they're going to come out in some other manifestation of neuroses or some other kind of ultimately self or other destructive behavior. And so, I don't know, me and all the homies are like, wow, I guess the name of the game here is to really be able to feel what comes up and to learn how to work with that and not be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of where I am now.
Yeah,
I mean, I've had
me too.
Very recently opportunities to explore feeling really shitty and sad and whatever, and just kind of going, wow, God, I could get on Instagram, I could have some sugar, I could do whatever. There's a million kind of things that I could get away with, in my guidelines of behavior that would be numbing or at least avoiding those. And I'm learning how to just allow whatever feelings come up to express themselves, as uncomfortable as it might be. And it's terrifying and it feels like shit. But it's interesting that they don't last that long.
It doesn't kill you. Sometimes you literally, if you were to unravel it, you actually have a belief structure somewhere. I mean, I know I did, that this particular feeling would kill me to go there. I remember having it like just shortly before I met my husband. I was like watching some TV show that had like, it was a comedy, but it was really moving. And it was about family. And I thought, I've always wanted family. I've always wanted children. I've always wanted to get married and have like a partner. And here I have like this really successful career. I'm never going to have that. I might never have that. And I went into the feeling. It was so big. I cried like I don't know if I've ever cried. And I got to the other side of it and I was like, oh my God, I didn't die. Like it didn't kill me. That fear of actually saying to myself, I may never have this idea that I thought I wanted. And I just felt so free. And I met my husband like 5 days later.
See, you got another surrender reward.
But I remember it was so big. I remember going, I can't even open my heart to feel this. And then this show, this is why I love TV and film and why I've always wanted to be an actor. Because I remember feeling that when I was a kid, like being transported into something, and it just opened these floodgates for me. And I just cried and cried. And I remember the end going, oh, wow, don't kill me. I'm okay. Like I made it through that.
We'll be right back at you after this brief but important announcement. I was at a party in Venice last night and I ran into a fellow podcaster, Jordan, from the Balanced Blonde podcast. And she was saying, dude, your shows are so long. How do you pay attention for 3 hours and stay engaged in the conversation? And I shared with her my secret weapon, which is the coconut matcha nootropic latte from choosecandor.com. This is a blend of coconut milk, MCT, and matcha green tea. Now, matcha green tea has L-theanine and caffeine, and these are molecules that pair really well together so that you have this alert focus, but you don't get too hyped and not be able to kind of keep your shit together like you would if you drank too much coffee. So this is a really great product. It's keto friendly. Almost all the carbs in it are prebiotic fiber. And I just take this throughout the day. Like I'll have my coffee in the morning, but I like the matcha latte during the day because it's not going to keep me up at night. So this is a really awesome product. It really works to improve your mental performance and focus, and it's totally natural. Unlike some of the other things I take to focus, which are cool and harmless, but a lot of people don't want to take a smart drug and, something that you have to order using Bitcoin from India and some of the other things that I take that I wouldn't necessarily recommend at large to the listeners of this show, but I can recommend choosecandor.com with complete confidence. It's safe, it's natural, it's completely amazing stuff. So that's choosecandor.com. The code is Lifestylist and the discount is 10%. Choosecandor.com. And now back to the interview. So as you're, doing your mom, family, husband, career thing, at what point did you come up with Annapurna Living, and what's that all about? Because it's, you have this other kind of, I say alter ego, it's just part of who you are and your wholeness, but now you have what's turned into a community and a business, and also with the Fierce Grace Collective. Bring us into how all of this inner work has evolved, where you have something to share and you're compelled to get it out there in the world.
Well, when I started having my kids, I started to feel quite isolated and quite lonely at times, and I felt like I really couldn't find my community. And it was sort of in the beginning of blogs. And I remember finding a blog called Soul Mama, who's actually become a really good friend of mine. And she's this mom in Maine. She was homeschooling her 5 kids, had them all at home.
Homeschooling 5 kids?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
What a hero.
But super, super incredible writer and interesting. And, but she had a farm, but very just me living in LA. Not that I've never been I grew up in the suburbs, in Vancouver, but something about the way that she was living her life inspired me. So every morning, motherhood can be quite monotonous, and, every day, and it was one thing I started to, check in with her blog every morning. And I started to kind of see myself reflected. I saw myself inspired. I got different ideas from her blog. And I just started having kind of my own awakening as a mother. And I didn't really see it reflected anywhere. And so originally Annapurna Living was about mothering, because I felt like, I think how a lot of mothers feel like I discovered the secret of the universe with my mothering or something, which I laugh at now, because mothering is quite humbling. As soon as you think you've got it figured it out, you're leveled. And then as soon as it's so hard, you think you can't go on, it gets so incredibly juicy and beautiful. And that is the dance, I think, of life. And so I just started writing, and I created this website. I also wanted to give other women, and when I say women, because I just feel like that's my audience, and that's like who I think of when I'm writing. And, but I have had such a blessing in my life of like Guru Singh and my other teacher, Paramatma Siri Sadhana, and all these different people that I've had, that I've gotten to talk to, Nadine, and, different people. And I wanted to share that with women who might live in the middle of nowhere and not have anywhere to go to have this kind of information. And then I also wanted to simplify the information for them. And then I started to do this thing where I would have interviews with women, because I was kind of interested in like, what do people do in their day? Like, what are they doing? Like, what are people doing? Like, what time do you get up? And what do you drink when you get up in the morning? And what are your routines? What are your rituals? Like, I wanted to know, because I needed some inspiration. I needed some ideas. So it started in that realm. And I never planned to bring like Kundalini yoga like into it, but it just sort of naturally happened. And I started to teach like, one of my favorite things that I offer is this thing called Simple and Sincere. And it's like, I just basically breaks down 10 days of like creating a simple and sincere meditation practice. Because when I was doing my Kundalini teacher training, that's what hit me the hardest, was it didn't matter. All that meant was the sincerity of my heart going into the practice. If I can't say the mantras perfectly, like all that perfectionism and all that spiritual, like it has to look a certain way, I wanted to just bust through that. And so I started to just make videos with my phone on my kitchen floor. And that was actually what I was doing. And I was doing that, and it was making my life better, so that I could deal with all of the mundaneness and the constant, like I had never really cooked. And so like I taught myself how to cook, and I set my table every night with like my favorite stuff. I make it look a certain way. I do that because it feels good to me. And I listen to my Kundalini yoga music while I'm cooking and making my food. I make mung beans and rice. I make yogi tea. I make, healthy food for my family. And I put my music, I sing, I dance. I feel like crap, and I turn my music on and I dance and I sing in my kitchen, and I feel better. And so that I ended up just sharing that online. And I really didn't have anything to sell, because I don't believe there's anything to buy. This is all an inside job. And so the Fierce Grace Collective is this sort of kind of 12 module experience that I share, with just looking at all the different aspects of a person, and like, looking at it through the lens of Kundalini yoga. Like there's Kundalini yoga meditations that are helpful. Look at it like prescriptions in a way, you're dealing with this, you're dealing with that, but looking at, one of the parts it's called rooting in. And it's just about like really, how do you look at your life and get rid of the things that aren't working? And that's a constant dance that I'm playing, that I'm doing. And so Annapurna Living is just really kind of like from my heart, sharing simple and sincere tools that I use to have a life that I love. And sometimes I don't have a life that I love. Sometimes I'm in a terrible mood and just feel like shit. But I have an incredible toolbox to create the life I want. And sometimes you got to fake it till you make it sometimes. And, I know some people think, oh, you can't do that. Sometimes, because, when you're the mom, I realized this really early on, that who I was being was the single most important thing for my kids. So I was reading books, and I was thinking that somebody else had the answer for it. And I was like, how I treat the person at the grocery store, how I treat the person when I'm driving my car, how I am with other people's children. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect in any of these ways. I have to work at it. But motherhood for me has made me stretch probably more than anything. I thought Hollywood made me stretch because I had to stretch to thrive and to be able to stay rooted and be me and to grow into me, because I was pretty young when I came here. I had to work really hard to do that. I've had to work even harder as a mother, because those places where I could just say, oh, that's just how I am. I'm just judgmental. Yeah, that's just in my genetic. I'm just judgmental and that's how I am. Well, then you have a kid. I mean, I had my children and I realized those little places that I probably wouldn't have done that work. I had to do it. I have to continue to do it.
As you started to build out this aggregate of content and then, realized that you'd created a platform because you kept adding to it, at what point did you get interested in learning about online marketing, and like how much have you gotten into that to understand how you actually create these platforms and get people interested in them and all of that stuff?
Well, I would lie in bed at night trying to figure out how to offer things. Like this is like way back. Like I was doing online courses like in email. Those were actually my favorite. And I would do it live on Instagram, not live, but like in an Instagram post, like day 1, day 2, but I would lie in bed and be like, oh, there's got to be another way. Like I could see my brain wanted to know, figure out how to offer this in a way that was in alignment with me. And here's where I get really, in terms of my business, and Annapurna Living is a business for sure, where I get stopped is that I don't really align with any of the marketing. I've got marketing advice. I've invested in some of the ideas that around, funneling and stuff like that. And I do have some systems in place, but at the end of the day, I took advice but I have to keep it aligned with who I am. And so, I don't believe that what I have, everybody needs. I don't believe that. My hope is people do, if they are that they get to where they know themselves and they know their own wisdom. Like they don't need me. One of the things I teach that I feel so passionate about is any teacher who makes you feel like you need what they do or you're not going to do well. Red flag, run. Guru Singh never did that to me ever. Never made me feel like I needed another session with him. I never was into therapy. I've always been into spiritual counseling because I'm not interested in this story, And Guru Singh, I would sit down with him in spiritual counsel and never did he say, oh, you need to come next week, And so, I've had acting teachers where it's like, if you don't work with me or just your work, and it's like anyone says that to me now, or I feel that vibe for a long time. Even if I think they're great, I won't work with them because to me, that is so toxic and so dangerous. And I have my shit together so I can know that, but I talk a lot about that because that's not, I have tools, go. So, I don't love Facebook, right? So I swore I wouldn't do, never done Facebook, but I did it for Annapurna Living. And right now we have a Facebook group, but I don't like it. I don't really want to do an Instagram live story, even though I know this week we have a little bit of a push going on for something that I'm offering. And, my one person that works for me, her name is Sadie Rose Casey, and she is like my everything. She's like, okay, you have to do 3 stories this week. And it's like, I'm in the car. I'm like doing this thing in the car. And she's like, oh, but it cut off. Can you redo it? And I'm like, actually, I can't. Like I'm really doing this inside my life. So I just do the best I can. And I know that it's a work in progress and I'm learning so much, but I definitely haven't figured any of that out. And I'm in a very busy time in my acting career right now. So it's kind of like, how can I keep this going? But I have created so much content that I feel, that I think would benefit people, that when more eyes come on to me, that I think people will benefit from that. And I trust that. And if it's meant to be, it's not my main job, right? I have another job that supports my family. And I really, Annapurna Living is really been something that I just really love. And I love that what I felt really freed about was that I could create my own content. I could do it all by myself. I didn't have to rely on anybody. In Hollywood, I have to get hired. I felt like creating Annapurna Living actually helped my acting career because I felt super empowered with knowing that I could create my own content. Like I could take an idea from thin air that I was ruminating and make something out of it. It might not be a movie, but it's a product that I've made that has value.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, if that's all I got from it, it's been incredible. I've loved it. And I have conversations with all kinds of women, and, you know, Nadine will be in town. I'll just grab my phone and we'll talk, and I'll share that with the women that are part of what I do. And I love that. I love doing that and being that bridge between, you know, like a lot of the women that have done the Fierce Grace Collective have gone on to do Kundalini teacher training. I think every single human being would benefit from doing the training. It is life training. I think it's more important than high school in certain ways. I wish I had learned it when I was 15 years old. I mean, it's so life-changing, that information in that 9 months of teacher training.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah. I think one thing that's really appealing about your approach to creating content and building community is the position that you have. And it's cool that it happened organically because it actually really is great marketing. But you're not playing guru and telling other people, you know, that are in your community that are, you know, you're leading essentially how to do it, and that you've arrived. And if you just do what I did, you'll be like me, but you're on a journey with them.
Yeah.
And co-learning, and each individual is the hero of their own story. So you don't have to be the hero. And I think that's a really accessible way to reach people, because each person does need to ultimately have a sense of autonomy and responsibility for their own journey. And if someone else is doing it for you, or you're looking to someone, you know, in some sort of position of authority over you, it's very disempowering in the end.
Yeah, I did this mentorship with another teacher that I found in New York. Her name's Paramatma Sirisana. She's so amazing. And I had no idea that I was even looking for a teacher. You know, it kind of was one of those moments. And she's young. And so I definitely didn't think that the teacher that I would find would be younger than me. And I remember mentoring with her for like 3 months. It was quite an investment that I made. It was so incredibly life-changing. And the first thing that she sent me was a Yogi Bhajan lecture on no one else can do the work for you. And I even think of it like now that I'm training to like, you know, get in shape and get strong and everything. Nobody else can do that for me. And it's tempting, right, to go, who has the right thing for me? Like, does anybody have the magic idea that I can, you know, like lose weight and get rid of this, you know, 3 babies, you know, body, and, you know, and like somebody must have the answer for me. Nobody has the answer for me. I do. And so do you. And so do all the women that I work with that come to me. And often you can see them wanting you to like figure it out, right? For them, Paramatma, like people have a question about something, a mantra or something. She's like, look it up. Empower yourself. You do the work. You know, we're a culture of kind of wanting, just kind of give me just the top level, like just like skim the surface, right? But there's so many layers of depth in all of this that ultimately heals you. And you end up cracking your own code. Like right now, I am deep in cracking my code for my body, my well-being, my vitality, my strength, my mental capacity, my ability to break through fear, and all of that stuff that I did when I was 30 and I did the first Matrix. It's like, I'm going to a whole nother level right now. And only I can do it for myself. I could hire like the greatest Hollywood trainer. But I have to want it. I have to do it. Right? So I mean, of course I have my team and I'm finding what works for me, but I'm not giving any of my power away. And I'm also not desperate.
Excellent.
Because the desperation is just not for me. Can't do it.
Yeah, it doesn't work, and it's also super uncomfortable as a state of being. I want to switch gears here, and I'm very fascinated with the idea of having natural childbirth.
Oh, you're so fun. Yeah, I think it's so sweet that as a man, you're so interested in the birthing, and I think it's great.
Well, yeah, as someone who doesn't have kids and I don't know that I've ever had like a really strong desire, but I'm open to the idea. It seems to be an amazing part of the human experience. So, if the stars align and that's meant to be, it's meant to be. But I also think that there seems to be a lot of trauma around the way that we've medicalized birth, because I'm just interested in health and psychology and all these things I'm interested in, and looking at my own birth circumstances, and specifically having a crazy vision on plant medicine about my birth. Yeah, which I talked about on the ayahuasca Welcome to the Jungle episode if someone wants to go back. But I think that the way we approach birth in quote unquote modern culture, Western culture, is that it's like an illness. You go to a hospital and it's like a disease. Like being pregnant's a disease, and from the time you get impregnated, you're treated as kind of a sick person that has to be monitored, and then you go to the giant building where sick people go. It's just it's weird. If you look at evolutionarily speaking, how we got here, it's a relatively new phenomenon, the way that we do it with all the drugs and machines and the bad lighting and the EMFs, and hospitals are just like the worst place to do anything that's going to lead to health, Yeah. And so whenever I hear about a woman who's taken, an alternative route, which to me is not alternative is going to the hospital, I'm very curious as to how that works. So if you could give us perhaps a rundown of what prompted that decision with your first child, what how do you build a team? What is the doula and the midwife and all of that kind of stuff? I've talked about it a little bit, I think, with Katie Wells, Wellness Mama. Yeah. But,
and also the woman from Mexico was talking a little bit about Michelle O'Daunt, who definitely impacted me as well. Well, I think if I can really look back at my true awakening, in terms of awakening as a woman, it was being pregnant with my first child. I assumed, I knew I was passionate about home birth and midwifery birth. I had, again, been at a bookstore in Australia. A book falls out at my feet. Really? Spiritual Midwifery by Ina May Gaskin. And so it's a great book. It's kind of, those of us who are passionate about home birth and natural birth, we all have that book. And I had been to a couple of home births. I think maybe just one at that time. No, two, actually. But I had this, gynecologist that I'd had for years. And I just was like, well, maybe I'll just, I'll just have it with him, and I'll just have a natural birth with my guy. And I'm pregnant with my first baby, and I go in and I didn't want to have an ultrasound because I had read in this book that, to wait and not to be like super heavy-handed with that. And I was just starting to explore some of these things that I had never been taught about or had no experience growing up being around birth in the way that I can see my children have been now. And my gynecologist at the time disempowered me by laughing at me when I said I wanted natural childbirth. Like, haha, well, we'll see about that. And scaring me into an ultrasound.
Male or female doctor?
Male doctor, who I'd always really liked and everything.
Are ultrasounds potentially hazardous to the baby or mom? I've heard not great things, kind of like with mammograms, the classical.
I don't think it's the same as mammograms, but we don't know yet.
Right.
Okay. We don't know because I just really, and I did have some, and I have friends who do none, and they feel that strongly about it. But I was just questioning that at that time. And he basically just thought that was so silly and then scared me into it. And I left there thinking, doctors, there's this feeling with doctors often. I don't have it anymore because I don't have any of these doctors in my life, but where what you say and what you feel is just, especially as a woman, is just not respected. And you're kind of talked down to in a way that was so blatant to me in that moment that I know has happened to me thousands of times. And in that moment, I believe being pregnant, I said, I will not have this. So I went a different route, went with a midwife, was going to have a home birth. I have a blood clotting issue that she actually wouldn't do a home birth for me with my first baby because she said, it could be, we don't know. And I appreciated her having that feeling. So I had a midwife, but I had my first baby downtown LA, in a hospital downtown LA. I lived walking distance to Cedars. I was not having my baby at Cedars. I was having my baby with a midwife. I drove downtown, had the baby, and came right back.
Why not Cedars?
Because I wanted a midwife at the time. They weren't using midwives
they won't
then.
do that?
Yeah, I just, everyone's like, oh, they have great suites there. And I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. Like I wanted to have a home birth, kind of accepted that wasn't going to happen for the first baby.
So you had a natural childbirth
With the first in a hospital setting with a midwife.
Oh, okay.
That is an option for people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
See, this is why I love doing these interviews because I think I know something and then I realize, oh wait, there's a middle ground there, right? Okay.
And I have to say that I was happy that it was how it needed to be for me in that situation. Then my second baby came. I had a midwife. I was planning to do the same thing, but I was so obsessed with this home birth thing. Like I was dreaming about it. I was I dreamt having my baby in the living room. And my midwife at the time, I said to her, I was due in about 2 weeks. And I said, if I went into labor and it was going well, could I have the baby at home? And she said, are you asking me for a home birth? And I've been it's all I talked to her about. Home birth, home birth, home birth, home birth. And I said, yeah. And she said, my experience is you have to want it. You have to really think about it. And you think about it, let's talk. She found she needed someone else to back her up. And so she came back and she said, if you want to. And I said, I absolutely want to. And decided to have a home birth. I was 2 weeks away from having my baby. I told no one this because I honestly could not afford anyone's negative energy around it.
Coloring
I did not tell
experience.
my mother. I could not handle the fear of anyone else. So it was a very non-codependent moment, I guess you could say. I made this decision for myself and my baby and my husband. And also I had a baby who was 2 years old and I didn't have a babysitter. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to even go to the hospital and have this baby. But anyway, so I had him at home and it was just the most incredible experience. It was just incredible. And then I had my third baby at home. And
Can I back you up on that before we get to third baby? I want to unpack it a little bit. So husband on board with whatever, or were there difficult conversations?
No, he was open to it. He was open to it. He's pretty progressive and he's very naturally trusts the body. And
right.
So that was not I didn't have anything to overcome with him.
And what's the difference between a midwife and a doula? And did you have both present at birth number 2?
So midwives are like the catching the baby. They're the medical part, I guess.
And they're medically ordained to some
I have
degree.
seen midwives,
like a nurse.
They're beyond that. They're trained to deliver babies.
Okay.
I've seen midwives do unbelievable things. I've seen midwives. They're so skilled at what they're doing that. I would, a really experienced, really good midwife at their talent. That's all they do, that's all they do. And midwives are a real blessing and we don't have enough of them. And, I'm forever in gratitude to my midwife that she, made the space for me to have that experience because it's, illegal in certain states. And, I know that it's a big deal. And, she had a doctor backing her and that doctor who's a very prominent gynecologist here in LA, I bow at his feet that he has supported midwives all these years because it means a lot to have a backup doctor.
Backup in the sense that they're at the hospital waiting in case.
They're not there, but that that if something happened, that someone's, I don't know how to explain it. It's more energetic, I would say.
Got it.
And then a doula is someone that's supporting you. It's like kind of, someone that's supporting you through the process. And ultimately, I have to say that what I learned in all three of my births, and each of them were as unique as my children are. So each baby, I felt like I cracked the code to the mystery of childbirth. And then I had another one and learned that there was a whole unique code for that. And it all ultimately came to surrender. So a doula is there supporting you. And the third baby that I had, it was me. It was me. And my midwife, she was there for me. My husband caught the baby.
Wow.
And I really got that, you can have all the best team in the world, but it's ultimately, it's where do you feel comfortable? So I'm very pro-birth, but it's about where do you feel most comfortable? So like, for instance, with my second baby, I thought we would go to the hospital with the midwife like we had with my first. We went into the hospital. I almost fainted at being in the hospital setting. I felt sick at the thought of being there. And I had to pay attention to that feeling. Then I'm at home and watching like the TV's on or something. And it's like the worst places to be for illness. Number one, the hospital. I'm like I knew I wanted a home birth, but I was a little afraid. I had to face a few things to get there. And it's a unique thing for everybody. So I don't say like everyone should have their baby at home. Everyone has their own journey. Where do they feel safest? Is it in a hospital setting? Can they feel like, where can you relax? You have to be relaxed to give birth,
I can imagine.
Yeah. So like Michel Odant, who is written incredible books about birth. I went to see him speak just before I had my third baby. And he impacted me so much. I mean, you're in this very vulnerable state. I'm about to have a baby. So you're just very open. Your body's opening and opening and opening. And I just remember like almost being drunk with his information, and it impacted my birth. He talked about a cat in the closet. Like a cat goes in, cat just knows it's time to have a baby, and they go in the closet and they just, they have their babies in the privacy. And that kind of happened for me with my daughter. And my other children were there. And
oh wow!
Well, my oldest was there. My middle son didn't want to be there, but my older son has been at both his siblings' births.
Wow!
And and I chose to do that. I wanted that. I don't know if he'd say. I don't think he says he doesn't really remember it, but sometimes when I look at the pictures from that time, I go, "Oh God!" As a mother, I didn't want to feel like I had to take care of you. You always feel like you have to take care of all your children, and when you're birthing, it is an incredible experience to come to that edge, man. It's incredible to come to that edge of everything that you think, everything that you know, and you have to let it all go to actually get to the other side. It is, I'm a bit of a birth junkie and I'm very interested in death as well. And the death doula side of life, because I have been in that energy of birth in such a major way. And I realize that as a culture, as devoid as we are of birth, understanding and the smell of birth, the vibe of birth, the sound of birth, it's just all put in like a medicalization model. Death too. I'm interested in those two transitions. And how that as a society, we really don't want to look at it. And why is that? And one thing I'm very passionate about too is, I had my kids 35, 36, 38, 41. I never doubted my body. I never allowed myself to doubt my body, nursing and all of that. And I had a miscarriage in between my second and third, which was really incredibly painful and much harder than I ever imagined the pain would be. And so I was
physically or emotionally?
Emotionally.
Oh, okay.
It was emotionally devastating. I just had no idea. It was very humbling. And so I was a little afraid with the third because I was just like, I don't want to be too attached because what if it doesn't happen? I don't want to get my hopes up high. I don't want to fall in love with this baby. I don't want to see my family as 3 just in case, but I had to work through that. It's like the dance of life. One of the things they say in birth is, as you are in your life, so will you be in your birth. It's not like you're going to suddenly, it's not like you're suddenly going to become some different person giving birth. If you're controlling, you're going to be controlling in your birth. If you're afraid, you're going to be afraid. I mean, there's growth to have. And see, I love growing. I love stretching. I love facing my fears and facing myself. So birth gave that to me. Not everybody wants that.
Right.
And I've had to, so that's when you meet somebody that doesn't want that. And by the way, they could think they don't want it. And by the end they do, because it takes 9 months to become ready for that. It's a process. It's not like we're all just like, oh, I know I want natural childbirth. It was I knew I had an idea that I wanted it. And then I started, I had a lot of fear around it. I mean, I have major claustrophobia, and sometimes I would be feeling for the baby in there. And I'm sure it goes back to me being in the womb and feeling that thing, and sometimes I'd just be like, oh, how's it? I don't know if I can do this, and then you go through it, and hopefully you have people on your team, which I had the best. For me, a midwife that was such an incredible, I had 2 midwives. One was a Sikh woman, and another just traditionally trained midwife. And they were instrumental in my expansion as a woman. And that's what birthing gave me. That's why I'm so passionate about it.
In terms of the mechanics of the thing, is a water birth how it's done, or is that another option in a home birth?
Yeah,
where are you laying?
Okay, so here's the thing.
How does that all happen?
You can have all the best laid plans. Here's my birth plan. I'm going to have this and this, and I was going to have my baby in water. I hated being in water.
Oh.
If I could have, I would have given birth on the toilet, all 3 of them. I mean, my midwife was like, we got to get out of the bathroom. It's like, you don't know. You can have the greatest ideas in the world, just like parenting. You can have all these ideas about parenting, but when you're dealing with the unique human being that you have as a child, which they're as unique as their births were, all my 3 children are so uniquely themselves. You're going to be challenged in different ways. The chemistry between one and you, and the chemistry, I mean, this is real. It's not the idea of parenting or the idea of birthing. Shit happens.
Oh God, I can imagine.
People lose babies in home births. They lose babies in hospitals. I mean, it happens. And it is so personal. And I say to anyone having a baby, dig deep, find what's right for you, where you feel most, do some healing work on your own personal birth. I mean, that's the first thing that I was introduced to, was looking at how babies were born when I was born. I didn't know from my mom. She didn't really remember all that much, but it was done in a certain way. Very disempowering for women, unless you were on that fringe having the home births, which women were doing in the 60s. But I had to I really kind of changed the paradigm for my lineage. I mean, probably not, way back when. I mean, my husband's grandmothers, one of them had 15 and the other had 13, and they had them at home.
My God.
One would die. I mean, that it was, one had twins and one of them didn't make it. I mean, it's like we are living in a very different culture, and we have so much great medical stuff that is helpful. But I remember with one of my children, I wanted to have the home birth, and she said, okay, but I want you to go in, because they thought my amniotic fluid was low or something. And the OBGYN wanted to look at it, wanted me to come in every day to check. And I was like, okay, if we did not have this ultrasound thing, we would never know that he thinks this. So am I really going to put my nervous system through the stress of, this? And so I went once, and then I went a couple of days later, and it was totally fine. And then I was so glad I didn't buy into it. You know what I mean? The fear. It's so hard, though. I got to say, it's very hard not to buy into the fear. It's really hard when you're the woman and you're going through it, but in the moment, I'm telling you, there's just nothing like it. Having natural childbirth, immediately after having the baby, you're just like, hi.
I can imagine.
It's hard, though.
Yeah,
it's no joke.
It sounds difficult, and also, I really resonate with the self-empowerment, and I think it goes back to my sort of tendency to fight authority. So in this particular case, so doctor, you went to med school and you have a white lab coat on, therefore you're my God and you're going to tell me how this is going to go. Fuck you. You know,
you're going to laugh at me when I tell you my dream, my heart's desire. You're going to go, little young lady, that's a great idea.
Oh, isn't
we'll
that cute?
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I've been through this with doctors so many times. I go in to have something checked out, and half the time, with all humility, I mean, I know more about the thing I'm going in to talk to them about than they do.
Of course you do.
Not because they're less intelligent. They've just
been trained a different way.
Yeah, they were trained a different way, and it wasn't necessary for them to learn things the way that I'm learning them, you know? So I find that I've had to fire a lot of doctors just because they're not open-minded, or they're just, like you said, disrespectful and they don't want to give me time to ask questions. And
it's a different model. It's
I'm like, dude, I'm paying you here. Like, you work for me. Yeah. I have questions. If you don't have the answer, let's find them. And if not, I'm going to find someone else.
It's an old way too. You know, Yogi Bhajan talked about this. Like, he was a Piscean teacher. Okay. He was hard. I mean, I never met him, but he was a hard teacher. Like, I don't know if I would have really liked him all that much. It might not have really resonated with me. It's an old way. The Aquarian way is much more Guru Singh. You know, it's much more kind of, even if you think about the educational system and you think about how we taught kids, and like, we're in a major shift right now where it's like teachers don't know even how to deal with the kids today because it's like so radically different. It's an Aquarian way. And so like this old model of even being a doctor, you know, one of my best friends is a doctor and she's the most compassionate person and she's so good at what she does. And I'll meet people and I'll say, I think she could help you. And they go and they just say, no one has ever listened to me like that. No one's ever held the space for me like that. That heals. Just your nervous system goes, wow, I'm not in a rush. And the person isn't saying, well, this isn't, I don't know what's going on. I mean, that's sort of the medical model. Like, well, we can't figure it out. All these mystery illnesses and all of this stuff. Whereas someone who's like, tell me, you know, and sees you as a full person, sees you as a mind, a body, and a soul, and a spirit, and doesn't just see you with your symptoms and sees it deeper and sees your childhood in there. I mean, that's real healing. I think that's the model that we're going toward, what you and I are attracted to. And, you know, most people have never had that experience.
I love what you're saying too about facing the reality of coming into the world and being incarnated, and then also being willing to face the terror of what happens on the other end of that. I recently saw Ram Dass's new documentary, Becoming Nobody. And, he, you know, of course, he's done a lot of hospice work and has really been someone who's gone deeply into the realm of death. And that's still not something that I've been very, very adept at facing. It's like, I've not really had people near me die. When I have friends at times and they have people that die, I mean, I'm compassionate, but I don't experience it in the same way because it's not something that I've been around a lot.
I get it.
But I do purposefully more and more contemplate the idea that this incarnation is finite. To the point that even a few years ago, I was just racing around a stupid muscle car out in the bush outside of Atlanta looking for hot springs, and I passed by a really beautiful cemetery. And I just had some time to kill, so I stopped in there. And they had a grave dug that was vacant and no one was around. And I just thought, I wonder what that's like. And so I got in the grave and I just laid there and stared at the sky. And it was such a beautiful experience because I realized that it wouldn't be that long until this body is doing just that. And then I'm going to be probably floating above this body and a bunch of sad people, hopefully, if I've been a good guy that garners a bunch of sad people. But it was actually, you know, it's exhilarating in the sense that I was able to face my own mortality and not get too attached to that. But it's still uncomfortable, you know, to contemplate that. As, you know, I'm about to turn 49 in a month, and I'm like, holy shit.
You're so young.
You're like that's kind of, in this paradigm, is kind of the halfway mark. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh shit. And the same goes with birth too. And I think that's why I'm so keen on exploring the ways in which women can have birth, because it's something that hasn't happened yet. And it's scary to me to think about being a father and having it done wrong and like fucking the kid up or having a traumatic experience.
Listen, and ultimately, this is what I always say, because I do end up talking to a lot of women about birthing, and people, I've attracted that kind of, because I'm so passionate about it, is that ultimately what I found was the birth is actually the child's birth. It's that soul's journey.
Oh, it's not about what I want or what my partner wants.
It's that soul's journey.
Right.
And what that soul needs is really their journey.
Oh, shit.
You could have the most natural birth and it could still be traumatic for the soul, and you don't know, like what that person is coming in with. But it's ultimately not about me. I get to have the experience. It's not about you. It's about, like even Guru Singh used to say about C-sections, that, women often feel a lot of grief around C-sections. I'd have women come to me weeping, like wanting natural childbirth, having a C-section for whatever reason. And I remember Guru Singh saying in a class once that actually coming through the birth canal is the most difficult thing you will ever do. Coming through is actually so hard that after that, you can do anything. It's how we start life. But some people don't need that. Some people don't need that hard thing. They come out and, the babies that come out C-section, they're like they're perfectly, they don't have the weird shaped heads and stuff like that. So
that's so
it's
trippy.
like, but when you take your own self out of it and you go, oh, there's something bigger at play here than what I want or what I think or how it should look, right? It's the same as everything, I think, in life. And it's like, my births, as much as I grew so much, in the end, it wasn't really about me. It's their entry into their, you're passing the torch, You really see that like with the thought of dying. And I can really see that, there's another generation coming behind me. You know what I mean? They don't know my grandmother, right? One day, my children's children won't know me. I mean, that's the cycle of life. And, do you remember the Kundalini yoga teacher training? There's like the death part. There was like a death meditation.
I don't remember that.
Okay. I couldn't do it. Like I had to sit out. I got like a migraine. Like all of a sudden, I felt like in the moment and of it, there's an actual meditation that Yogi Bhajan has that it's like, or Kundalini yoga, that you practice so that when you are at that moment of death, that if you can remember this, that you can free yourself from the fear and the constriction of what's happening in the moment. It's written really well. I understand it, but I'm not sure I can really explain it. I haven't really talked about it that much. So I can feel my lack of being able to articulate it properly. But I remember like starting it, and I remember kind of floating out of my body, and it felt quite good. But my connection to my children made me come right back. I instantly got a headache and I had to leave. Like I need to feel grounded because I'm holding, like I have this cord to these 3 people that need me. Like I can't go get wasted. You know what I mean? And
right.
I mean, I couldn't, you know what I mean? It kind of had that element in a little bit. And personally, I couldn't do it. Couldn't do that. It's one part that I didn't do. But I'm with you. Like the death thing is definitely something. I've had some friends pass away in the last few years, and I felt very privileged for them to allow me in to parts of the process. Not the actual passing, but the process of them, and seeing what they were exploring near the end of their life is part of what I teach. Actually, it was a big inspiration on Annapurna Living. Was a friend of mine who was dying, who was really going alternatively for cancer and was really going to all these different modalities. And literally up to the moment that she passed away, she wasn't sure if she was dying or detoxing. And I wasn't sure either, because she was just so clear about what she was doing, and how she was doing it. And I learned a lot from her. She's the one who really brought home to me that idea of the parasympathetic nervous system that we talk a lot about in Kundalini yoga as well, and in yoga in general, and that people talk about a lot now, but 5-6 years ago, I wasn't hearing it a lot. She was telling me she was working with a healer woman who told her that her parasympathetic nervous system was just non-existent. And she said, well, what is that? And the woman brought this pot of water, hot water, and my friend slipped her feet into the water. And as she slipped her feet into the water, she said, and the woman said, that.
Oh, wow.
You haven't been nurturing that at all. And my friend was telling me this, and I thought, I don't know how to do that. And every woman I know, none of us are doing that. And I started to really write about that. And I started to really, it's sort of what the Fierce Grace, and actually the Fierce Grace, Ram Dass had a movie. There was a documentary about his life called Fierce Grace. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
it's
amazing as well.
And do you remember in the moment when he was dying, he had a stroke and he was going towards the light and he didn't. And he was like, he couldn't believe that he wasn't able to just let go. Like he was questioning in that documentary. Like he thought that he was so enlightened that it would just be effortless for him to like slip out. But he came back into the body and now had to deal with the stroke. And I mean, that movie, I've seen that probably 25 times.
Really?
Oh my God. I've read everything of Ram Dass. I mean, Ram Dass for me as a writer, I go to alternative consciousness reading the way that he writes. He expands my mind to where I literally feel high.
It's funny. I've never read Ram Dass. I don't have any of his books. I've just listened to his lectures.
The only dance there is, read that. Oh my God. You have to.
Okay. Noted.
And even for relationship, it's so powerful. When you just stop, he just explains and is able to just share like how we just we wear ideas, we wear masks, we think we have to be a certain way and we expect the other person. And this is what I've learned in my 20 years of marriage and
Perfect segue.
Yeah. And
that's what I wanted to ask you about next.
Is that you want to be with someone where you can be yourself and right back at the other person. And that doesn't mean that you have to agree or have the exact same ideas about how life should be. I mean, it's like, I think that's sort of like an idea that really keeps us from like opening to people, like we don't agree. My husband and I don't agree on everything. We have a real similarity in a lot of ways. And we're both really hungry for growth, right? We both really want to grow and we want to support each other's growth. But ultimately, I think being 20 years in, I can see the ways that I wanted to control. And when I really realized he needs to be him, not how I want him to be. And I don't want to be the way that he wants me to be. Like how about discovering who we are and continuing to discover who we are and changing and growing and reinventing ourselves all the time. I mean, don't have to go be with a new person to reinvent yourself if you're authentically reinventing yourself for you.
How soon into your relationship did you become aware that you felt the inner freedom to be yourself and to let go?
Well, I mean, we got married really quickly. We got married in Guru Singh's, in a session at Guru Singh's, like on a Thursday with like people there watching us get married. I mean, we just did it ourselves. And we got married 6 months after we met each other.
Wow. God, that defies all
logic,
guidelines of what works and what doesn't.
Yep. And it's been a process. I wouldn't say that I have no idea. I think it ebbs and flows. And I think sometimes I feel like I can't be myself. And, I just think life is like that. It's just never, I've learned a lot having kids, seeing how it just changes and changes and changes and changes. As soon as you get comfortable, it's like hard. Like I said earlier, hard, it gets great. I think marriage is sort of similar in that way because it's relationship. It's working through your stuff. It's working through that childhood stuff, a lot of it, to get to where you can say to the person when they're acting out of their wound, hey, that is that old thing. And you, what? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that you can hear each other and not necessarily hear each other easily, but the overarching goal is growth. And growth is messy sometimes. So
AKA all the time.
And it's interesting. I don't know if I really feel this way anymore, but I would think about like being married, and I've been married so long. And although I feel so young, and I feel like our relationship is so young, and like I feel like I've had many lifetimes with my husband, and many lifetimes I feel like I've had so many lifetimes in the last like 6 years. It's crazy. But I always envisioned that on my deathbed, I would need to be with him, that he would help me transition. I don't know how I got that, or he's quite comfortable in that, in that realm. He's not afraid of death. I grew up very afraid, and never was, we weren't around people dying. Like my grandmother, our great grandmother was ill. Like kids didn't get to go see her. It wasn't a normal part of life in the way that I grew up. And so I'm kind of busting through that a little bit. And he's more comfortable. So I used to always say, I'm going first. I'm going to need you to like talk me through, the letting go at the end. Like, I don't want to hold on for dear life,
Oh my God.
It's intense.
How have you, other than intuition and experience and trial and error, learned about parenting? Have there been teachers or books or any kind of framework that you've followed that you found to be effective?
Well, I mean, I think the more connected I become to myself, the more that I know that the answers are not outside of me, and that, I've read a lot of books. I'm very into Waldorf education. I love Waldorf education, but I also feel that ultimately what my kids need is the same thing my husband and I need. And that is authentic parents, like to be authentic, imperfectly perfect, And so letting go of any perfectionism, apologizing. I mean, I've just really figured it out on my own, but I do have this woman, Natalie Christensen. She is amazing, who really helped me when it started to get really hard, like at certain parts that were more triggering for me. And she really helped me to make room for the feelings. And ultimately, it started with making room for my own feelings. So for instance, what will happen with mothers often, and we have a course on annapurna living called Mother, that is one of my favorite offerings that we have. If you're kind of holding it together all day long, or all week long, or all month long, and your buttons are getting pushed, and you're kind of moving through it, and then at night you go to brush teeth and your kid doesn't want to brush their teeth, it's suddenly like you just go from 0 to 1,000, because you've not let that valve go throughout the day. So what I've learned from her is to acknowledge, God, that feels crappy. So somebody will say something to me, or something will happen, or I'll try on my jeans and they don't fit. If I don't acknowledge, it's just like an inner thing of, it's okay, I'm okay. Or, what you just said to me hurt my feelings. I don't even have to say it out loud. I can just say it to myself, name it, touch myself, offer myself some compassion. I don't have to blow up at the end of the day. It's when I don't do that work, it just ends up like getting to be too much. So when a child has a breakdown, meltdown, they've had a bunch of those happen to them too. They could have been for, my daughter apologized to me for something she did a year ago and explained to me what happened in that moment for her. These are human beings, right? They're, and innocent. And, what did she say to me? Something about that she had rejected something I'd made to eat. This is years ago. And I was having a moment of feeling unappreciated, and like, I do all this, and like, I'm tired of, cooking. I was feeling that frustration. And she came, I was having a bath, and she came back and she said to me, but she was being very like, I'm not going to, that behavior that can be quite triggering, And she comes back to me and she says, Mom, I just wanted you to know that sometimes when you make new food, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't know if I'm going to like it or not. That's really valid.
Yeah, that's good. Some great honesty.
That's really, really valid. Yeah. And So, when you make room for that kind of stuff, you can have like real relationship, and it's like up and down and never perfect, and not projecting perfectionism onto your kids. I mean, I think that's the biggest, people get an idea of what it's going to be like having kids, and it's dangerous to project that onto them.
Yeah, I think that's the view I sometimes hold is like, okay, I just need to find the right expert, teaches me how to be a parent, and then I'll just like biohack parenthood. It's like, no
biohack.
Damn it. What's the hack? What's the shortcut?
There's no biohack, but it's like even life, like I'm all about the biohacks. Like I love it. But ultimately, there's no hack. Right?
Yeah. Well, there's,
there's, like I'm saying, like at the core, you know what I mean? At the core, there is you and you, you with you and you with the universe, and like that dance, and all these things are so amazing. We need our blue blocks very shortly. I love it. And, I love all these, I love them all, but ultimately like my own connection to myself. If I don't have that going, none of that stuff works. So my commitment to myself starts with how can I be more connected to myself? And I go, weeks and months not feeling connected, but I catch myself pretty quickly now. But I think that there's no hack for parenting. There's nobody that's going to come show you how.
I'm getting that sense.
Yeah. But it's incredibly humbling and an incredible experience, because it's human beings. It's having relationship with human beings.
Well, it's exceedingly rare that I meet someone that legitimately regrets having kids. I actually met someone recently, and they said, you know what, if I could do it again, she's a very lovely person. I'm sure loves her kids to death, but she said, if I could do it again, I don't think I would have kids. I was like, shit, no one ever either says that or admits it, but that's so rare. Even guys that aren't like the parenting type that I know that have kids, even though were unplanned, once the kid's born, they're like, oh my God, it changed my life. It's the best thing ever. You got to do it. I mean, that's the universal experience, I would say, is that it's life's greatest gift.
Yeah. I remember working with Suzanne Plachette. Do you remember Suzanne Plachette? She's an actress, and she was the wife in, oh gosh, I forget the show, but she's amazing. And I didn't have kids or anything. I don't think I wasn't even married or anything. And I was, I think like 26 or something. And she said, she said, yes, children are great. They're great as long as they're in those pajamas, the pajamas with the zipper and the feet, those PJs.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, that's horrible. And I get it. It's not that it gets harder, because when they're little, you think you have some kind of control, and you really don't. You have no control. But if you're deeply connected to your child, they really want to like hang out with you, and they want to please you because they want to be with you and it feel good and all of that. As they get older and they start to stretch into their own autonomy, it's hard for them, harder for them than it is for us probably. Especially when you're deeply connected to your children. And the world is starting, what do they say? 0 to 7, it's the mother, 7 to 14, it's the father. Then all of a sudden it's the rest of the world. And you hope that you've given them that solid foundation. So with that when the world starts looking at them and telling them who they are, that hopefully at the core of them, they know. It's all I want for my kids, is that they know who they are. And, how do you do that? Well, you make sure you're doing that work on yourself, right? And that's why parenting is so incredible, because you have to dig deep. You have to. Anybody who tells you that it's like there's it's so beautiful and so juicy and just nothing like it. And then it just challenges you in ways that are so beautiful. Really. Yeah, I mean, I'm super grateful. I remember with my third, I did a tally and asked people if they said 2 boys. They were 2 years apart. And I was like, should we have another one? We had a miscarriage. It was really hard. I wasn't sure, like I'm 41, 41 is going to be easy to get pregnant. I wasn't sure, and I asked everybody who had two if they wished they'd had one more. And everyone said yes, except my mom. My mom had a boy and a girl, and she just loved having just two. And so I said to my husband, we got to try one more. Just if it's meant to be, it'll be. We got pregnant like the first time we tried.
Damn.
Yeah. She wanted to come,
Yeah.
and that's the thing too. Souls are coming through. It's not, the thing I get concerned about with the medicalization of it all, and, a lot of fear that women get put on them about fertility, and a lot of it rightly so, due to probably our toxic world that we're living with, that women miss out sometimes on that, the soul aspect. That, does the soul want to come? Does the soul want to come to you and your partner? It's not, there's something mystical and magical about it that I see, that I experienced. And I hope that we don't medicalize the crap out of it so much that we lose that, because that would be a real shame. But, I don't know.
Have to honor the unseen hand.
Yeah.
The big plan. That's the thing. I like what you're saying about how they're not your kids. These are entities that have chosen you as the vehicle by which to come here and have this experience. It's a completely different way.
And it's cliche, right? It's like there's like poems about it. And I remember people like sending it to me, and I'd be like, I had my babies like strapped onto me. I slept with them. I mean, I was like, these are my kids. Like I would have taken, a hit like over and over and over again, like every mother would for their children. But as it kind of has progressed, I can just, it's clarity that comes with experience, don't necessarily know it. You have to feel you're so attached to your baby when they're born, because they need you to be.
Yeah.
You're the father is just falling in love with the baby because they need you to fall in love with them. It's like, it's incredible. Yeah.
Well, our audience today has fallen in love with you. I have no doubt.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. It was fun.
I think it's a good point to wrap it up on a nice positive kind of reincarnation tip.
Yeah.
You've taught me a bunch today, as all my guests do. I'm so privileged to have such fascinating conversations with people. You might know this is coming because you said you listened to the show, but who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced your life that you might be able to point our listeners to go study up on?
Definitely Ram Dass, for sure. The Only Dance There Is. I think that's what it's called. That was very instrumental. And the documentary Fierce Grace. I think it's just got a lot of real nuggets of consciousness in there. Definitely Guru Singh.
For those listening, he's been on the show as well. I don't remember the number, but if you search Luke Story Guru Singh, you'll find it somewhere.
And I'll say with him, Paramaatma Siri Sadhana, because they're both Kundalini Yoga teachers, and they've been really instrumental in my Kundalini Yoga consciousness expansion. And then Natalie Christensen, who is this woman who's taught me a lot about making room for my feelings. And I had no idea that kind of work would be so transformative. But she has I think it's called the Center for Emotional Education. But it's very simple work and life-changing to make room for your feelings. So I would recommend, she has very accessible price point, like offerings that are just so reasonable. She and her husband do it together, and they're just incredibly gifted at what they do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for the resources. Yeah. And where can we find you on social media, websites, et cetera? Anything you want to...
annapurnaliving.com is my website. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm on Carrie-Anne Moss, and I have an Instagram, Carrie-Anne Moss. And then I have Love Annapurna Living. I'm sporadic on there because I have to actually take it off my phone, the app, so that I don't spend too much time down that rabbit hole. So I'm definitely not super active there.
You're my hero. I want to learn how to do that. I really struggle with the phone thing.
Yeah, it's hard.
Oh my God.
I'm really bad too.
I'm so addicted to that stupid thing.
I know we all are. I'm with you.
But Instagram, it's hard to get someone else to do it for you. For me, it's like a very personal expression and way to connect with people.
Well, and then it's your work. I mean, I don't have,
it's like hard to outsource that particular thing, I feel like.
Yeah, but what would happen if you're not on, if
would it
if
really
it's not
make
active?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to just let that go, for myself. But what you do is different. So it's a different thing. So I think discipline comes in where you have to have like parameters, or you just go down that rabbit hole. You have to. And I mean, I try to do that, and it's very difficult. This is a very addictive.
I wish there was an app on your phone that would electrically shock your fingers like horribly when you set certain times. Okay, so I'm going to do an Instagram post at 9 a.m. and I'm going to answer as many DMs as I can, and then do it again at 6 or whatever. And any other time you touch Instagram, your phone shocks the shit out of you.
I just put that thing on my phone, on Instagram in the top right-hand corner. It tells me when I'm up for an hour.
Right.
I just push. That's okay.
Totally. Yeah,
that's okay.
Totally.
I got time today. But God. Usually, what I just go, and when you have kids, you really notice this. But it doesn't just take having kids. It's like your whole life is happening, like right here, right now. What the do I need to be staring at this thing? I mean, what the heck? And we're all doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of like an old lady like saying this, but I just feel like we just have to have some kind of accountability with each other to like go, okay, let's come together, put them away, and let's come together and really have face to face. Even when you're having face to face, you're like, oh yeah, I read oh, let me look. I want to show you. Oh, that quote, I want to show you. It's like, no, like put them away and just have some time, just some time.
Yeah. I actually find in relationship, it's much easier to not use my phone because there's interaction and engagement there. And if you both can agree, like, let's not be that couple that's, so bored of each other that they lay in bed and ignore each other while they're on their phone. It's cool if you're with someone that's on board, like, yeah, you know what? They have this awareness around the phone. Like, let's hang.
That can even, that novelty can wear off too, right? Like after years and stuff. I mean, it's like discipline, I think. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah. It's good to have support from people that are aware.
Totally.
Yeah. Like any of my friends that hear this, I'm giving you the right to bust my chops when I'm on my phone too much.
And I think I think Paramatma said this to me because I, was really triggered by my children when they started to use devices, and we didn't have them for the kids when they were little. And it really changed the dynamic of our family for sure. Like, I mean, I know the difference, And she was like, yeah, I remember when I was a kid and I would go on road trips. She said, and our parents would just pull off the car and they'd say, just go, just like run around. And she goes, maybe you can do that with devices where you just go, just go for it. Because like as I was leaving and my middle son was on his video game, and, I see him see me and he's like he has a charge.
He's nervous.
He has a charge because of how I feel about it. That I don't want to put on him. That's shame that I'm putting on him. That's, and I am doing my best, but I'm triggered. This is a trigger for me. This is where I'm saying this is like, you're constantly, so when you look at somebody that you just adore and you see that look of like, you go, oh, I don't want to do that to that person. I love him, but I also don't want him on the device all the time. So we're going to communicate, find something that works for both of us. This is how we're going to do it. And then it's going to go over onto one side and then we're going to hash it out again and find a new way. And you know what I mean? That's the dance of it.
The device dance of parenting.
It's brutal.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you over. And Cookie's been loving on you the whole interview here. Those of you
She's my amp coil.
Yeah.
Who needs an amp coil when
totally.
I got this cutie
All right.
pie.
Well, until we meet again, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that was an enlightening conversation, wasn't it? I told you it was going to be an awakening. Don't say I didn't warn you. I'm guessing after that intimate and authentic conversation with Carrie-Anne, you will never see a Matrix movie the same way ever again. And hopefully not your own life either. So many valuable nuggets of wisdom to be had in that conversation. And I'm forever grateful to be able to have them and share them with you. We've got a bunch more shows coming up, man. Really good stuff. We've got a bonus rebroadcast of my appearance on the Breaking Normal podcast on Sunday. Tuesday, we've got the Battle of Biohacks when Ben Greenfield comes over to my house and wreaks havoc on the whole property. Then a solo show next Friday. And let's thank our sponsors, man, because frankly, without them, I wouldn't be on this microphone right now after 3 years. I might have made it 6 months, out of pocket. Being like, wow, this is fun. I have a podcast. I spend money on it. It's awesome. Well, now getting pretty close to being able to make a living doing this. And that is all because of our amazing sponsors and you listeners that support them. First one up is Candor. These guys make some awesome products. And it actually reminds me, I'm out of their matcha nootropic drink right now. So, hey, guys at Candor, if you hear this, you got my address. You know what I'm saying? But seriously, this matcha and coconut milk little drink situation is the perfect midday pick-me-up. It's rad. You can find it at choosecandor.com. And especially if you're someone that doesn't tolerate, you think you don't tolerate coffee or caffeine, well, you might be surprised at their matcha blend and how gentle it is, but it really wakes you up. It's awesome. So choosecandor.com. The code is Lifestylist for 10% off. You can also take your free caffeine quiz over there, which is going to be really informative and let you know what your caffeine tolerance is, which is really interesting. I took mine and I'm kind of in the middle of the scale, which means I'm going to drink coffee in the morning and my Candor matcha latte in the afternoon if I need it. And most days I do. And we've got foursigmatic.com/the Lifestylist, the great medicinal mushroom blends and instant coffee. I just packed up my bag for Costa Rica. And of course, I threw a bunch of the Four Sigmatic mushroom coffees in there because all I need is some hot or even cold water. And I have a very nutritious pick-me-up on the road. That's foursigmatic.com/the Lifestylist. And again, the code there is the Lifestylist to save 15%. And then our friends over at Organifi. And these guys help me not have to eat salads as much. No, seriously. I take the green powder and I'm getting probably more nutrition than your average salad, much faster and more conveniently. That's Organifi.com/Luke. That's Organifi spelled with an I. And the code there for 20% off your order is the Lifestylist. Also check out the Organifi Gold. Hot tip there for an evening drink. Mix that up with a little coconut oil in the blender or some ghee if you want to get wild. And that is a delicious little tonic, the Organifi Gold. And you can find all of our sponsors and everything else in the world that I personally use and believe in over at lukestory.com/store. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to get over to Carrie-Anne's website and social media and check out what she's doing. She's not only a great actress, but she's doing very cool things in the world, as you may have guessed from that conversation. So thank you, and I'll be back at you Sunday, Tuesday, and again Friday.